All right, so for the first fight of to start the night for the UFC Fight Night, Tybura versus Spivac. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Spivac, whatever. The rematch, the second fight. We're kicking it off with the first fight of the card. Now, this is actually an early start time for the card again, so we have back-to-back weekends. It told yesterday when I looked at it, it said the prelims were at 2 my time, which is Mountain Standard Time, and now it's saying it's 1 o'clock. I don't know how it got bumped up an hour. But this is back to back weekends now, back to back Saturdays where we've had early start times, which is weird because I mean this is a Vegas event, so and normally like Apex events don't tend to start this early. They kind of start later at night. And my at first my reasoning was okay, maybe there's like some boxing event or some sort of other combat sports, a big event going on outside of the UFC that they don't want to collide and clash with the scheduling with. But when I looked at all the combat sports for boxing, I mean, there is a boxing fight, there's a boxing card, but it's not really like a heavy hitter, big name, like crazy card, and it's taking place in New Mexico. It's a lot of Mexican, Hispanic fighters on the card. Maybe Dana White's want to respect that, but there was not really any like big noticeable names unless you're a big boxing fan. But nonetheless, it is what it is. So back to back early start times, back to back. I mean, last weekend's card was pretty good for a fight night card for Abu Dhabi. I would say it was a banger. It would have been even cooler if Vicente Luque and Nick Diaz ended up panning out. But I think there was some sort of like visa issue or something like that going on there. I don't know. Something fell through to where the fight could not happen. I don't think it was Vicente Luque who had a problem. I think it was more Nick Diaz trying to like with travel or something with visa. I know along those lines. So it is what it is. Good card last weekend. This is kind of a lackluster, disappointing cards. One of the type of events that the company is trying to like put together, makeshift. Honestly, it just felt like this was kind of a rushed event, makeshift last second, because the Tybura main event wasn't till or the Tybura fight wasn't announced till like a week or two ago. It feels like so. This was definitely somewhat rushed, and also this is definitely a smaller card. There's only 10 fights on the card. Normally we see like 13, 14. Sometimes if it's a stretch, if you get like 15, 16, like on a lengthy card. But yeah, this is only 10 fights. This is what I think 4 on the prelims. There's no early prelims. So prelims and then jump straight into a main card where we got 6 fights taking place. They should have just broke it up even 5 and 5. I don't know why or who plans that or how the scheduling works out, but it just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But yes, anyways, enough of me ranting and rambling on. We got the first fight of the card. Stephanie Luciano versus Talita. I want to say it's pronounced Talita. That's how it's spelled. Alencar. I deeply apologize if I butcher your name if she ever watches this. That's like how I am on the channel. The biggest pet peeve is like butchering, mispronouncing names. I try my best, but hey, there's only so many people in the world and try and pronounce with all these crazy, accents and stuff. So it is what it is. But anyways, we got Stephanie Luciano taking place here, a Brazil on Brazil crime fight here. Now, when I first looked at this fight, when I was delving into the research into it, I was actually curious about the Talita side because I feel like she could be definitely a live dog in here and kind of disrespectful odds. I kind of handicapped it as a pick'em. But then the more I looked closely recently, the other night, I was digging deep on the Stephanie Luciano side. And then also what caught my eye is there's a huge height and reach advantage, which is absolutely a problem, especially in women's MMA. But sometimes it's not really posing as a threat because this is no disrespect or no hate to women's MMA or women's fighters. It's just like they don't have the same technicality or fight IQ as men. And this is, I'm telling you, like wholeheartedly, this is not to bash any women's MMA or women in general. It's just, I've seen time and time again with girls that have longer reach and height advantage that they don't know how to use it to their advantage. Whereas guys, they're cautious and aware, like, okay, hey, I'm 5'9" with so and so wingspan. I'm fighting like 5'3" Kevin Hart. I'm just going to piece him up on the feet. I know he's going to shoot for takedowns. Let's keep the distance. Let's keep the range. Like, perfect example last weekend. Corey Sandhagen, taller dude, longer reach advantage. And everyone saw Nurmagomedov with finishes. They saw Corey Sandhagen with some finishes. And I saw a lot of people, taking the Corey Sandhagen side respectfully. He has high fight IQ. He can survive. and, you know, make things happen and get late finishes. Same thing with Nurmagomedov. Never been tested around 5 rounds. That was the biggest question mark that people were wondering what we were going to get from him, despite having Khabib and the wrestling background and the high IQ, which is respectable. I mean, it was even fight IQ. I would give the slight lean or edge towards the Corey Sandhagen side. But yeah, I saw people like saying, oh, this fight's not going the distance, ITD, someone's getting finished, Umar's going to finish him, or Corey might starch him. And you got to keep in mind, you know, Nurmagomedov is going to have a high gas tank. I don't care what nobody says. He has decent striking. They definitely worked on that. They've been working that a lot more over there in the War Eagle, you know, Eagle team, whatever, Khabib camp over there in Russia. I mean, we've seen Islam striking improve drastically. Everyone that's coming out of there, everyone just thinks they're straight on wrestlers, which is that their strong suit? Is that their main focal point in their fight camps and their fight game? Absolutely. But don't knock their striking because it's definitely only getting better and better. And they're working with other teams and camps individually to get that striking up. So, and you saw it in the fight, the live adjustment. Khabib literally told Umar, hey, trust your striking. It's there. It's there. You can beat him on the feet. You can scrap with this dude, Corey Sandhagen. You know what I mean? So, but the reason why people thought it was going to go, you know, inside the distance is because Corey Sandhagen had that reach. We knew he was going to try his best to keep Umar away and at bay and at distance, which he tried, but Umar just has the technicality to close the gap and get the takedowns. We knew Corey Sandhagen knew how to sprawl. He's very technical, very high IQ on the ground. And so we knew Umar was going to have a hard time struggling getting the finish on the feet. We saw Corey Sandhagen just continue to barrel roll after barrel roll, and he just has longer limbs. And when you have longer limbs and a shorter, compact guy and you're rolling around on the ground, it's just hard to get those submission finishes because those lengthier limbs just, like, they can just get out of any submission or hold. There were some scares, though. There was some, you know, there was a crucifix that was almost there for Umar that he could have got Sandhagen, but he wasn't going to let it happen. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, Corey Sandhagen's only been finished once in his career, and he got submitted by Aljamain Sterling, which is like, okay, that was when Aljamain was at his peak, finding his groove and finding his rhythm. And you could argue that technicality-wise, that Aljamain is a little bit stronger than Umar and more of a technical submission artist with mixing with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Whereas Umar, he doesn't have the finesse yet to his ground game. He's just pure, you know, brawler, like strength. He just wants to roll around on you, like just pure wrestling. So maybe once he gets that acclimated and figured out, those submissions will be there. But yeah, so for like this perfect example is where you had a guy with the more fight IQ, longer reach, and people just right away off the bat, the casuals went and thought, oh, this is going to go straight to an ITD finish, which is not necessarily the case, which goes back to this Stephanie fight where it's like, you see guys with longer reach, they know what they're due, they know what they're capable of. So that fight was obviously going the distance. And with these girls is they just get too amped up. They get too anxious, they get too jittery, and, you know, partially a little bit more emotional. They get frustrated real easily and real quick, like very quickly. And when things aren't going their way, they quickly fall apart. And this is what scares me is even though both girls have the same amount, basically the same amount, Stephanie has one more fight underneath her belt, and it didn't really matter because, I mean, it was a draw or no contest, whatever it was. And so basically both girls have 6 fights to their name. So no one really has the advantage over one another when it comes to, you know, fight experience. But, I mean, Talita does have the age factor, which is she is the older fighter by 9 years, almost a 10-year age gap difference, which is very, very big and very, very drastic. I mean, she does have experience in terms of age, but not in terms in fighting experience, which is a little alarming because she's only fought, like I said, those 6 times, and she drew in her first UFC fight, and that was actually versus none other than Stephanie Luciano. That was in the Dana White Contender Series. So we're getting a rematch here. Between both girls who have, you know, unsettled, you know, beef business. They got to settle the score and find out who's who. Maybe we get a trilogy out of these girls. I mean, no one really cares to see a trilogy. These aren't your bigger names in MMA or for the women's division either. But she has, let's go take a look. I mean, Talita, 4 fights in regionals. She was in Titan FC, which is whatever. Then she moved up to LFA, which is the more prominent, more notable regional scene. And she was successful coming into the UFC at 4-0. flawless, and then she met her match with Stephanie where she drew, and then now she's coming off of a split decision and eking out a close, narrow victory over Ryan dos Santos. But that was all the way back in December 9th, 2023 of last year. So damn near an 8-month layoff, literally almost very, very close to a whole year-long layoff, which is not good to see when you're an older fighter. You don't have much experience on your resume. You're not as active. Maybe it takes, with her older age, it takes her a little longer to recover than some of these younger girls. But that's not something I want to see, because when you start creeping up into your 30s, especially in MMA and fighting, your window of opportunity and your window of success only shortens, especially when you're not as active to, build up your strength, you build up your resume, build up your fight IQ. But this Stephanie Luciano girl isn't leaps and bounds over her. I mean, both girls are practically somewhat even, but in terms of all around like fighting technique, fighting style, fighting, everything, I would give the edge. I mean, despite both girls drawing the last time they came out, I'd give the edge to Stephanie Luciano. She just has more tools in her toolkit. She has more pathways to victory than, let's say, Talita does, because there's only so much you can do, especially when you don't have the height advantage, don't have the size advantage. I mean, we're talking drastic size. I mean, we're talking 5'1" compared to a 5'6" fighter, which is, and women's MMA, that's huge, because I just don't see where Talita can come out victorious unless she just absolutely starks and pieces up Stephanie on the feet. But if she gets into striking exchanges, it may not go her favor, because I would argue that Stephanie Luciano is a little bit of the better striker, and I don't see Talita closing any gaps, closing any windows of opportunity to, tighten the gaps from Stephanie Luciano and getting any takedowns. And if she does take down Stephanie Luciano, I don't think she's proactive enough offensively on the ground game to warrant a scare or warrant, a submission finish out there. So she's going to find herself struggling deeply. And with the younger fighter, Stephanie should have the healthier, more vibrant gas tank. If she gasses out to this 33-year-old, Talita girl, that's on her from being unprepared. That's on her team for just absolutely costing her. I'm not familiar with her fight team or her camp. She's coming out of Gordino fight team, not a prominent team that I am familiar with or heard of. So I can't speak on her team. And I believe Talita, when I last checked, she was coming out of American Combat Gym, which is not bad. It's okay. She stole Jake Paul's nickname, by the way, the Problem Child. So I mean, it feels like everyone has the same nickname nowadays, so it don't even matter. But yeah, so at first I was thinking, okay, live dog. I would personally handicap this as a pick'em. I mean, I think Stephanie Luciano opened up at like minus 180 on the books at one point, and she has come down 20 cents. She's come down to minus 160. So I mean, the books are fairly reasonable with this one. They're like taking precautionary tail with Stephanie, because we just don't know what we're gonna get. Me personally, women's MMA and women's fights recently kind of have burned a hole in my pocket. They've cost me some parlays the last 2-3 cards. It's just tough to read unless you know the top girls and what they're capable of. I mean, this is stemming back from the last fight between Shevchenko and Grasso, when I was on Shevchenko in the trilogy in the rematch, and then they drew, majority draw, so the belt gets retained to Grasso's side somehow. I don't know how that works. I thought the belt gets vacated on a draw, and it's just whatever at that point. But I guess it's scored in favor of the defending champ, so she gets to keep her belt. And I was pissed. I had like a $10 parlay. I was at the sports book watching. It was like a $10 10-leg parlay to win like $17K. Last leg was Shevchenko by decision. And I was like, oh, she clearly won. I had Shevchenko 3-2. I had Shevchenko 4-1 at one point. Like, I don't know what the judges saw. It was drastically all Shevchenko all day long. She was more proactive on the ground, dominating her, was sparking her up. I mean, Grasso had some cool strikes that, bounced Shevchenko back, made her retreat a little bit. But, Shevchenko was more aggressive, more dominant, applied pressure, and was making Grasso backpedal most of the time and messed up her game plan. So for the judges to call majority draw, I clearly had 3-2 almost basically 4-1 Shevchenko. And I was so excited. I was standing up at the sports book, raising my, slip, my ticket. I was like, let's go. I'm about to cash big. And they called draw. So I was like, okay, maybe it voids, because sometimes the line will void in the sports book and they just count it as a wash, like a draw, right? And so they just lower your payout on your parlay or your bet. If you straight bet it, you just get your money back. But if it's a parlay, and so I go up to the counter and they go, nah, it's scored as a loss. And I go check, because I had it on the FanDuel app and then I had it in person at BetMGM at the kiosk. And they're like, yeah, no, sir, you lost. And I checked my app. I'm like, no way. And they scored it as a loss because Grasso, gets a retainer belt. Then recently, I had Molly McCann. She gets absolutely trashed on by a girl who was looking like a trash can. Now, that was partially my bad because I didn't realize that. I forget who she fought. It was not Luana Santos. It was, I know it was a Brazilian fighter. I'm blanking on her name, and that's very on my part. That's bad on my part. But she was coming out of the Fighting Nerds team, and the Fighting Nerds team is like one of the top teams out there right now in the world, in the nation, in all of MMA, in all of UFC. The Fighting Nerds have a hot roster right now. They're very technical, one of the highest IQ. They do watch nothing but tape. They're called the Fighting Nerds for a reason. That's their little gimmick. They wear the glasses because what's his name? Kyle Bralho was in her corner. And when they announced her victory and they raced her and I saw him behind her, I was like, oh shit, you gotta be kidding me. That's partially on me for not doing my homework and noting that she was in the Fighting Nerds team. Had I known that, I probably would have laid the juice price, because she was like plus 280. It's like a crazy underdog. So straight betting that. And especially with Molly, I just rolled with the Molly side because she's borderline going to get cut from the UFC. She's literally only on the roster because of being friends with Patty. And honestly, she should be cut. And if she's not cut by now, I'd be absolutely shocked. And I just thought she would come out more desperate and more hungry for the win and get back into the win column after her up and down struggles. So I lost that one. And then last weekend, I was on Victoria Dudakova, and she freaking loses to a trash can, absolute trash can, in Sam Hughes, which is absolutely embarrassing. And Victoria Dudakova was looking like one of the top prominent prospects coming up in women's MMA. And one of the judges gave it to Victoria 29-28, one to Sam Hughes, and then two judges gave it 29-28 to Sam Hughes, and then one judge gave it 30-27 to Victoria, which is what I had. So I'm curious what the judges saw in that fight. I mean, Victoria matched her on the striking, was more proactive on the takedowns, more control time, and she almost tried to sneak in a sub attempt there. So I don't know. The judging on last weekend's card was very, very weird. Like, Bedoya could have arguably won. They had it drastically Jai Herbert's way, and I was like, I don't know. I thought Jordan Vucinic pulled off as a live underdog. The only one where the judging on the scorecard made sense was Gaziev, and even Mackenzie Dern was questionable. Iverson Figueiredo was iffy, and so majority of the fights ended up by finish, but the ones that did go to decision, there was a lot of questionable, deciding factors in that one. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Stephanie Luciano, I kind of want to put her on my main card, my actual card for my picks. If I were to pick a prop in this one, I'd probably be taking, this fight is most likely majority going to go to the distance. Most women's MMA fights do. It's very rare you get a finish unless, like I said, you're the top dogs. But most of these girls are either tough enough or they're very evenly matched to where they can survive and counteract each other's strengths and linger to the distance. Even if you're getting absolutely sparked up and destroyed, like just absolutely pieced up on the feet, some of these girls just don't know when to quit, and they'll go out with, down swinging if they have to. So yeah, I would probably lean Stephanie Luciano to bounce back after these girls drew the last time out in Dana White Contender Series. She comes out victorious. Like I said, she just has more pathways to victory. She has the length. She has the youth. Both girls evenly matched with orthodox stance. Stephanie's landing more punches per minute. She's landing almost triple, basically double. And not only is she landing more in higher volume, she's way more accurate. She's landing double the accuracy than Talita is. So striking's definitely not there for Talita, especially at the distance and range that Stephanie could put her at. I think the strength is Talita's takedowns game, but with the length of Stephanie, it just balances and checks each other out. So there's just no clear advantage there. And if she tries to submit Stephanie, it's just not there. I mean, it's a true 50-50 pick'em. This is why, with the way women's MMA has been burning my pockets and ruining my parlays, I don't want to start off a card on the L, on the wrong side, on the wrong track. I feel comfortable and semi-confident in the Stephanie side, so I'm going to lean that way. That's going to be my unofficial play, because the reason why it's not official is not really making my card. So I would play it safe with her money line. Parlay it, straight bet it. I mean, minus 160 warrants a straight bet. Her decision prop is plus 120. I mean, if you want to do a parlay with total rounds over under, you're probably safe on the over 2.5 side. Fight going the distance, if you want to do a parlay with that, you're probably safe with taking the yes. So yeah, I would definitely lean Stephanie Luciano over Talita Alencar. Taking on to the next fight in the 145 featherweight division. This one's a very interesting fight. Definitely caught my eye. We got Youssef Zalal taking on Jarno Errens. Now, I'm more familiar with the Jarno Errens side. Youssef Zalal, it's been a name I've heard frequently recently. I think I caught his last fight. I gotta go check his profile real quick. I believe I've seen him fight once or twice. Okay, that's what it is. I caught his last fight. So that was his return to the UFC. He fought Billy Quarantino, and he ended up winning by submission. This was back in March of this year. So yeah, I am familiar with Youssef Zalal. He caught my eye, and I believe I was on the Youssef Zalal side. I think it was a pick'em fight from what I remember, or it was leaning towards Youssef Zalal. I don't think he was favored, or maybe Billy Q was favored. I think Youssef Zalal might have been an underdog. I gotta go double check like in my betting history, but yeah, I was on the Youssef Zalal side as a dog. But he's taking on Jarno Errens here, and this is what I like. The way they update their website now, and they got like everyone's background and country, because they're showing Netherlands for Jarno Errens, Youssef Zalal, whereas before I don't think ESPN or the UFC really cared that much. It wasn't as big of a deal to them, and they didn't really do much research into their background, because they would just, if they didn't know, they would just label them as American, and they would put the American flag next to them. I'm like, these guys, these people definitely aren't American. They may have citizenship or train out of America or something, but they ain't no American, right? Like, I'm American born, but my background and everything is definitely Mexican with the history of my family. And so it's cool to see them update their nationality with their little flag. So I thought that was, the little things like that matter to me. I'm more OCD that way. That's the way I'm wired. So I just thought it was a cool little thing to see the Morocco with the Moroccan flag and Netherlands. So we definitely got an interesting matchup here based on the countries. But we got 5'10" fighting 5'11", so basically even on the height and basically even on the reach, 1 inch difference, so that doesn't really scare me. We got conflicting stances here on the striking on the feet. We got a switch stance over here for Zalal versus your natural orthodox for Jarno. Not much of an age differential. We got a 2-year age difference. So I mean, the youth slightly leaning towards the favor of Youssef Zalal, but the age factor isn't really bothersome to me here, because when you get guys close in age or they're mid to late 20s, early 30s, I mean, the only way it scares me is if you get like a mid to mid 30s to like a young 20, mid 20-year-old fighter, just like how we saw last fight. We have a 24-year-old fighting a 33-year-old. Because once you start reaching that window of 33, 34, 35, once you start reaching that mid 30s in the MMA fight game, sure, you have fighting experience, right? And you could take advantage of a young, inexperienced opponent. It just depends what the resume looks like for both fighters. But when you start creeping on older, it's harder to make weight, right? It's harder to put on for these fights. You gas out early. Don't care how good your gas tank is. I don't care if you're Nate Diaz, whatever. So your skills start to deteriorate and go with you. And it just doesn't last as long when you have someone who's young, hungry, up and coming, and they may not be as polished or fight IQ, but trust me, that huge age gap. And when you're in your mid 30s, you're susceptible to getting finished because your chin starts to leave you. So you're susceptible to knockouts. Your ground game, I mean, when someone's applying so much pressure on you and you're older and you're tiring out, you're susceptible to submission. So always keep that in mind, in the back of your mind with the age. Unless you're like Jackie Chan, or not Jackie Chan, unless you're like Bruce Lee at like 40 years old, fighting some guy with like 2 fights to his name and he's like 22, then that's completely different, right? But none of these guys are Bruce Lee, and majority of these guys aren't going to be 22 with no fight experience. So you don't have to worry about that. So anyways, we're looking at the striking on the feet. Both guys are landing with pretty okay, decent volume. They're evenly matched. Youssef Zalal is, rounding out at like 3 strikes per minute. Same thing with Jarno Evans, about 3.5. And even accuracy, I mean, we can lean Youssef Zalal on the accuracy with a slight lean, only 5% better. So, I mean, both guys are roughly in the 50% range. So, not bad. Evenly matched on the feet. And rightfully so. I think Jarno Evans has some solid hands. And his defense isn't really that good. Like, his fight IQ on the feet is okay. He's more of like a Sean O'Malley type in terms of like a sniper. He's patient. He waits for windows of opportunity to open up and leave yourself susceptible. I've caught a few Jarno Errens fights, and it's tough handicapping Jarno Errens because, like, he's just a wild card, man. You don't know what you're going to get with this guy. Another one of the guys where it's like when you look at his resume and his record, just too up and down. And there's fights where he puts on and he shows, fight IQ and wherewithal, and he's like aware, conscious, and he's really, really good and polished. And then there's like the next fight he puts on, he's just not there. He checks out, abandons his team's game plan, abandons his team's coaching, just in one ear out the other. So there's moments where he's like coachable and he's listening, retaining, receiving information. And then the next fight he'll turn around and not give a fuck. So it's like, I don't know what to make of this guy. I want to see good things from him. I was actually not a big fan, but I was a solid fan of his early on. I was like, okay, this guy's pretty sick. He's pretty cool. And then he just started going dumb on me. I mean, in his last 5 fights, he's 2-3. He's only had 3 fights in the UFC. So before the UFC, I mean, 14-5-1 record. Both guys have the same exact record. Youssef's a loss, 14-5-1 as well. So we'll see who comes out on top with the better record here. But yeah, only 3 fights for Jarno Errens, and he's coming out of regionals. He's bounced around from a bunch of different regional scenes. He's been fighting since 2015, so definitely has experience, right? He's basically been fighting since he was 20. He's 29 now, and he's had a lot of time to learn and grow. Not as much in the UFC because, like I said before in past episodes, the UFC is a whole different ball game, man. This is top of the line, best of the best in the world. Now, Bellator, these other corporations, these other companies, these other promotions, right? They're probably like next in terms of quality of competition, right? They're probably like a step under LFA. Some of these regional scenes, Cage Warriors are the closest thing you're probably going to get to the UFC level, but nothing is topping the UFC level. This is best of the best in the world. And, like most fighters say, there's levels to this game, and there are definitely levels to this game. Because you see a lot of guys transition, and they don't really transition beautifully. Or most guys that transfer from the regional scene to the UFC, they struggle early on, right? Maybe they drop a fight or two. Sometimes they drop their first fight. They get a couple a couple fights under the resume versus some stepping stone guys who's been there in the company for a while. Make a name for themselves, start threatening the rankings, and, it is what it is, because you're never going to come into your UFC debut successfully. It's very rare that does happen. I mean, Vucenic last weekend, I thought he was a live dog. I wasn't too high on Garam. Vucenic was almost going to make my, live underdog, almost made my official picks and card. I did sprinkle a little bit live on Vucenic. After that first round, he definitely won that first round. I low-key thought he won the fight. I don't know how Garam stole that or squeaked out with that victory. I definitely thought Vucenic was going to win that. But Vucenic looks really, really good, man. He looks really, really good on the feet. We know his strength is the ground game and his wrestling, so I think Vucenic is going to be a prominent, not household name just yet, but he could be a superstar in the making up and coming in the UFC promotion. I mean, he had great success in Cage Warriors, and we see time and time again, a lot of guys that come out of the Cage Warrior regional scene, transition pretty smoothly and do, pretty well in the, UFC scene. I mean, majority, I think all, if not damn near all, I want to say it's probably like 80-90% of Cage Warrior fighters have at least competed and contended for the belt or have touched and defended the belt. I mean, list goes on and on. We got, Conor McGregor, Lerone Murphy was close at one point. He was a title contender, almost got his shot. I believe Ilya Taporia, I don't know if he came into Cage Warriors or if he was just on a kickboxing regional scene. I think he fought a couple of times in Cage Warriors. I have to double check. But yeah, you see a lot of, I mean, Ian Machado Gary is a hot name coming out of Cage Warriors. So a lot of those UK, I mean, Tom Aspinall, you know, a lot of the UK Irish guys find success. I think Oban Elliott is Cage Warriors, and he's, you know, doing pretty well for himself right now. He's a force, you know, to be reckoned with, up and coming. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely think Jarno Errens. But when I first looked at this, I was leaning the Jarno side because I was like, damn, why is Youssef Zalal minus 600? I think he opened up at like -4. I think it was like -425 or something like that, -375. Then he shot all the way up to like -450. Then he shot up again to like -545, -550, and now he's came back down a little bit to -500. I think some of the sharps are trying to get in on the Jarno Aaron side, which he's definitely live. His fight IQ is there, but the thing with Youssef Zalal, and I was like, that's why I had to go do my homework on Youssef Zalal. I was like, -500, man. I don't care who you are, what you are in the UFC and MMA in the fight game, unless you have the clear advantage and the clear all around better fighter, then you know I could see why you're warrant at that price tag. But in fighting in a sport that's truly 50-50, right? I mean, other sports, you're talking NFL, NBA. I mean, if you're talking like Lakers at their peak playing the shitty Hornets at their worst, okay, maybe the Lakers do deserve to be -1,000 favorite, right? And especially in a team aspect, you can clearly see the dominant, better side, better players, right? So mathematically, it checks out to take those heavy favorites. And then with NFL, like let's say the Carolina Panthers, I don't think they're going to be the worst team this year, but let's just say hypothetically speaking, all right, let's go Patriots, right? I don't think they're going to be that good. They're playing the number 1 seed in like their AFC conference. Okay, I could see why so and so's -300, 400. I mean, but football is also another one of those sports where so many hypotheticals, right? It's almost close to a true 50-50 than most sports. Fighting, when it's one-on-one, it's you versus the guy who has a better fight IQ, better fight style, who wants it more, who's hungry, who doesn't want to get finished or put away. It's very, very hard to lay -5, whatever, 100, -1,000 on a singular individual because, I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I've been hosed time and time again on live favorites. Leech, perfect example. Last leg of my parlay, I had Leech, me and my buddy. It was like a $700 7-leg parlay. Leech was like -2,000 live going into the decision on the card. Clear winner, clear favorite, gets robbed, and he got lost by the split decision. I was sitting there baffled and confused. I didn't understand how he lost at all. So I mean, we've seen it time and time again. It's very, very scary and very, very gotta be very cautious tailing these -500s because you just don't know what you're gonna get. Youssef Zalal could have a perfect game plan, right? All it takes for Youssef Zalal is to overextend, do too much, miss his strike, miss his counter punch, be wide open, and Jarno Errens, bam, uppercut coming, sparks Youssef Zalal, rings his bell or puts him out. Like there's so many factors in that makes me so cautious in this fight game. Well, with all that being said, looking at the tape, Youssef Zalal does look like the clear better side. He does warrant that -500 price tag. But when you look at the resume in both guys' record, similar even record, similar height, similar age, they're more even across the board than you think, than you know. So that's why, like, I would like to sprinkle live on Jarno Aaron, especially if he drops the first round and finds a way to, you know, claw back and find a little success, find some rhythms, find some groove. Maybe he comes out with a little bit of jitters, a little bit iffy, a little bit slow, and then he drops like minus or plus something, and you sprinkle like 10, $20 on it, and he can pull off a decision upset. That'd be cool to see. But Youssef Zalal, I mean, you take a look at this guy, right? He's been fighting since both guys 20 fights to their name, but yeah, he's been fighting since 2017. So definitely not near as long as, you know, as Jarno Aaron. So he's fought in 2 less years, but he has the same amount of fights. So I mean, he's a little bit more proactive. His last fight was March 23rd of 2024. So literally just fought 5 months ago, which is a decent, solid turnaround. He's trying to stay proactive, trying to stay busy, you know, trying to keep moving on the up and up, make a name for himself. Whereas Jarno Aaron's, I believe he hasn't fought since last year. So he has a big layover, which is why I believe that's part of the handicap that the sportsbook have in their pricing. Because when you have both guys who are really young and in the prime of their fighting career, it's not good to have a lengthy layover like that. Oh, excuse me. Jarno Aaron's actually fought March 23rd of this year. Actually, he fought on the same exact card. He fought on the same exact card of Youssef Zalal. So Youssef Zalal was on the main event card, on the main card, and he fought Billy Q, won by sub in the second round. And Jarno Errens came out victorious by unanimous decision. And to be fair, Jarno Errens definitely had the advantage on that fight. He fought Steven Nguyen, who was literally coming up out of, that was literally basically his UFC debut. He was coming out of the Dana White Contender Series, right? Steven fought in the Dana White Contender Series a while back. He lost, had to fight regionals, had to make his way back up, and then he won back-to-back in the Dana White Contender Series before he got his shot into the UFC. And, I mean, he was the favorite. Jarno Errens, again, plus 135 underdog on that card, and he dominated to an easy unanimous decision. He won 30-27 across the board. He had a knockdown, and he just sparked up Steven Nguyen on the feet. So we could get that Jarno Errens here. However, I don't think Jarno Errens has like heavy hands to knock out Youssef Zalal. I think Youssef Zalal has a pretty solid chin. And I mean, he tries to stay agile. He tries to stay out of those, high volume exchanges, tries to evade. He's very high IQ and knowing like, okay, if I get sparked or touched up here, I don't like that. I don't want to be there. So I'm going to get the hell out of there, right? I would say Youssef Zalal doesn't have the better technical, like the sharp technical boxing that, Jarno Errens does. I think Jarno Errens has better combos than Youssef Zalal. Where Youssef Zalal does beat Jarno Errens is Youssef Zalal has heavier hands. I think he hits harder. I think he can spark somebody up. But the thing is, I don't think Youssef Zalal, I think he's very aware and cautious that he does not want to overextend himself in these high volume exchanges with Jarno Errens. I think he just wants to keep that jab, keep him at bay, keep him at distance, piece him up on the feet. But the minute you start swinging wild, heavy hands, Jarno Errens knows, like, ooh, he slips that. Almost Conor McGregor, like prime Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor was an agile, moving, bobbing and weaving. And I see a little bit of that in Jarno Errens when I've seen his fight tape and some of his film, where he likes to, slip, bink. So Youssef Zalal has to be cautious of that. I think Youssef Zalal's clear advantage here is definitely on the ground. I think he's definitely a stronger, heavier guy, despite being, the same weight class. I think he just knows how to use his weight and lean on somebody, exhaust them, wear them down, wear and tear, just play dead body weight. He's definitely a wrestler, despite what the fighting style or what any website tries to tell you. Is he balanced both? Both guys are balanced evenly on the feet, but I would give the slight lean and edge to Youssef Zalal. So I think Youssef Zalal, hopefully his team are aware of that and come out with the game plan to immediately take this to the mat, immediately take this to the ground against Jarno Errens. Don't try to stay in high volume exchange with Jarno Errens and just keep him there and lay on him to a boring, super boring. It's not pretty, it's not sexy, it's not something you want to watch unless you're like a high, caliber, high IQ, technical MMA practitioner fan like I am. A lot of these casuals, they want to compare this sport to boxing. Oh, this dude's not getting lit up and spark on the feet. This sport is so boring. He's just laying on them for 25 minutes. They don't understand or see like the technicality sides of the ground game, with the sprawling, the rolling, the hand fighting. You have to be a true MMA practitioner to actually enjoy and love that stuff. I love it. A lot of these casuals out here, they just look for the knockouts and finishes. They don't really understand. They want to say and think they do and believe that they do, but they don't. So don't listen to your average public opinion. But for the true, real MMA fans that understand and get it, you guys are appreciated and loved, and I appreciate it. Like MMA Guru, those top guys, that report, and have big followings on this name or on this sport and in the fighting business or in the UFC MMA business. Majority of them, they're just, clowns talking for clicks and reactions, and they don't understand, they don't know, they don't get it. Like your average reporter, unless you're like actually a fighter like Kamaru Usman or Dustin Poirier, the guys like Paul Felder, DC, a lot of the guys that are actually in the broadcasting booth that been there before, that done that understand and get it, they know, we know, so try to take it with a grain of salt with what majority of what these guys say, because they have absolutely no fucking clue what I'm talking about for the most part. Anyways, that was a little side rant, side tangent. Don't want to get rolled up in that. But yeah, speaking of Youssef Zalal, like I said, So going back to 2017, he's coming up in the regional scene. So he actually was bouncing around. He was in Mileham, MMA Mayhem. So I believe he's actually fighting at a Factory X. Now, a buddy of mine, shout out to him. He knows who he is. Another MMA fan. He's fought in MMA before, pro amateur regional scenes. He's also in the Twitch stream chat, by the way. We're also live on Twitch. So if you guys are over here watching on YouTube, make sure you follow me on Twitch or Kick. We're going to try and do the show more live for you guys if you guys want to watch in live time. If not, don't worry. It'll be posted up on the YouTube channel. So relax, calm down. Anyways, he is actually fighting out of the Factory X Muay Thai team, Muay Thai camp. I wasn't familiar with them at first, and then in recent times, I've been familiar with them. My boy, he's fought there. He's trained there before for one of his fights at a Factory X. You've had a bunch of different names come out of Factory X. The high altitude training, high volume training. So they have a decent, solid fight team. I wouldn't say it's like a top team in the world like Fighting Nerds or some of these, fight teams and camps out there. But they're respectable. They're notable. They're honorable. They're definitely top 15, top 10 teams out there. And top 10's a stretch. They're definitely up there, though. They have notable guys on the roster from their team in the resume. So I think Youssef Zalal, he was on a way different team before he got into this Mile High MMA Mayhem regional scene, then Paramount MMA. So he was definitely there in and out of like the Denver, Colorado area, which is where the Factory X team is taking place. And he might have revamped his career by doing that because he learned a lot more. That's why I think I also give him a slight lean towards the wrestling side, because that's where, despite being a Muay Thai gym, right, they do high grappling exchanges there in Factory X, right? High volume wrestling and high stretches, like almost Khabib-like. Nothing is going to match Khabib's wrestling from what I've heard from different fighters that have trained there, that have fought there, their regiments and what they do. Like, you can't get water unless you get up. Even if the timer goes out, the round's not over past until you get up from the back position on the ground. Just crazy, wild shit, which is why it makes Khabib's team just so much light years way better ahead than your typical average MMA fighter, and why most MMA fighters are seeking out Khabib's wisdom to be successful. But yeah, Factory X is similar like that because they have the high altitude training and the high volume, grappling exchanges. So don't be fooled by the Muay Thai name in the Factory X. They're definitely more leaning towards the wrestling based side of things. But yeah, coming up in the regional scene, I mean, Youssef Zalal was coming in 6-0, and then he met his match. He found back-to-back losses and then was victorious again. So he was 7-2, and he made his way into LFA a lot sooner. So, I mean, his regional fights hold more weight because he's been in the more prominent regional scene than Jarno Errens. So he had an immediate kickstart to his career. I mean, in the regionals, he lost to Chepe Mariscal, who's also on this fight card later on in the main card, which we will definitely get into on that fight. I'm very, very intrigued and interested to see that fight and how that plays out and goes down. But I mean, he lost a unanimous decision to Chepe Mariscal, who's looking really good in the UFC right now, 3-0 so far, flawless. So, I mean, that's not a bad loss on your resume. Then he comes into the UFC back in COVID in 2020, and he started out hot. He started out 3-0. Then he went on a 3-fight losing streak and then drew. And so that little skid right there got him out of the UFC. I don't know if he took himself out or if he got dropped off the roster or they, booted him or whatever. And so he went back to regional scene in Sparta, got a few fights under his resume underneath his belt. He was a victorious 3 times, 3 in a row, all by way of finish. And then he comes back into the UFC just earlier this year, found his way again, got a new contract, and was successful and got a finish. So 4 out of his last 5, he's been victorious. And the one time he wasn't victorious, it literally drew. And he drew against Damon Blackshear, which Damon Blackshear is an okay fighter. It's a solid fighter. So nothing to hang your head about that. Sure, you want to win that one because it's a fight that probably in my eyes and in Youssef Zalal's eyes that he should have won. So, I mean, you can't knock him for that, but he hasn't had high level competition in Sparta, right? These are kind of guys that are like kind of cans, not notable guys. But sometimes when you're trying to revamp and find yourself again, you're testing things out, trying to figure out who you are. And all it takes is to get your feet wet again. Maybe, if, like I said, sometimes it just takes stepping stone competition, lower level competition to get there. So it's not a knock on him or anybody for whatever reason. And it seemed to work because he comes back into the UFC, fights a solid fighter in Billy Q, who's a decent name, right? A respectable win, or it could be a respectable loss if you lose to him, and you submit him, you finish him. So, I mean, the 4 fights he's come victorious, he has won by finish. So it's like 2 by sub, 2 by knockout, and, you know, so can't hang your head on that. And majority of his losses, or actually all of his losses, he's won by or lost by decision. So Youssef Zalal has never been finished, 4-0 by knockout, 7-0 by sub. So that's very threatening. He's more well-rounded, you know, on the feet, more well-rounded on the feet and on the ground. I'm not going to say he's a better, you know, striker than Jarno Errens. I'll give Jarno Errens a slight edge, but Youssef Zalal definitely has the ground game edge. I mean, if you want to take a look closely at Jarno Errens, I think this fight is a true 50-50 pick'em. Okay? The getting behind the minus 500 price tag is very scary because I know a lot of people, you know, the sharps are going to try and get in on the Jarno Errens side. They're going to try and say, oh, let's sprinkle. It doesn't hurt to get in on a live dog. And the other majority of the half people are just going to see minus 500. They're going to see Youssef Zalal has been looking really good recently in recent times. And Jarno Errens hasn't been looking good recently, right? And they're going to be like, oh, okay, we're just going to throw a minus 500 in the parlay. Well, that's the second fight. This is the second fight on the card, right? Only the second fight in. You get burned and toasted and lose a minus 500 money line on a parlay. You'll be making second-guessing life choices, right? So in order to make this a profitable fight and come out successful on the successful side is I would probably lean Youssef Zalal by decision. I don't think there's going to be a finish here. Again, a lot of people are going to see a finish with the way Youssef Zalal has come out aggressive. Now, could he get a late finish, late second round, early third, or late third round before that buzzer rings? Absolutely. The only way I see him winning, though, is by submission. So I would sprinkle double chance, like submission or decision, just in case, like second or third round, you know, second or third round, he gets that late finish. So just in case, because you don't want to get hosed by just straight betting the decision, right? I would sprinkle some on late sub, rounds 2 or 3 sub, because I don't see Jarno Errens getting knocked out by Youssef Zalal. I'm sorry, he has heavy hands, but he just doesn't have the polished boxing to put the combinations together to actually like light up Jarno Errens. And like I said, Jarno Errens has solid, you know, striking defense. He has, you know, striking defensive IQ, and he's never been knocked out ever. He's 3-0 by knockout. The only time he's lost by finish is by sub, 5-1 by sub. So he's not bad on the ground either. He can match it. So with the way Jarno Errens is surviving, I think he can survive Youssef Zalal here. And Youssef Zalal, I mean, he's been sparking people, but then again, I think Jarno Errens, despite what his record says, despite what his recency, you know, has been looking like, he's a lot better than some of these fighters that Youssef Zalal has fought. So definitely a step up for both guys. This is going to be actually a really, really good fight. I'm very intrigued to see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, Jarno Errens, he is 1-2 in the UFC, which is why you guys got to keep that in mind because he's coming near to an end of his UFC contract. The majority of these guys, when they get signed into the company, you only get 4 or 5 fights to your first contract. And especially when you're struggling like this, that contract can be voided and terminated, null and void, and just ripped up because they just drop you. They just cut you from the roster. So you got to be careful with that too, because Jarno Errens could try and come out here hungry and try and, you know, even if he does lose, he's going to try his best to put on an exciting fight and make things happen and make it a respectable loss. Because if you're losing in a respectable loss, a respectable fashion, let's say he makes it a split decision or makes it close and scary for the judges, he may not get dropped or cut, so he wouldn't have to worry about that. But when you got a guy who his back is against the wall, hasn't had a great UFC success, and he's on borderline of losing his contract and getting dropped, they come out a little more hungrier. That's what I expected Molly McCann to happen. And I mean, she had the -400 price tag to warrant that. So, I mean, it's scary to lean plus 350 here. But if I were to sprinkle anything, I don't think Jarno Errens gets put away here. I think Youssef Zalal wins by a close decision. And you might actually get good odds. Let's double check here. Oh, wow. That's actually shocking. -135. Sometimes when you see like a heavy favorite like that, when you go a decision prop, you know, you get like plus money, good plus money, because when you get heavy favorites, they think clearly that they're gonna win inside the distance. So you could probably get like majority of the time, from what I've seen, you could get like decision props on a heavy favorite guy, like plus 200-300. And so minus 135 is alarming, but that's not bad if you want to put together like a cheeky little parlay. Maybe you could do like a little two-teamer to get the card started off right and get it going. You get Youssef Zalal by decision and you get Stephanie Luciano by decision. You might have a nice little two-team right there. Yeah, I'm going to lean the Youssef Zalal side by decision. Sprinkle some on his sub, and submission or decision is live. So they like over 2.5 rounds here. The odd makers do. They also like the fight to go to distance minus 200. So this is another one of those fights where it's like, yeah, the odds makers lean that way as well. So far, me and the odds makers are aligned of how I project these fights to the outlook for them, which is kind of scary. Sometimes I don't like agreeing with the books, but hey, it is what it is. Also, let me know if you guys are intrigued in Price Picks because no, this video is not sponsored by Price Picks. Hey, Price Picks, the show goes somewhere and you want to sponsor the show, I'm all for it. I'm more for that, but probably not going to get sponsored with what I'm about to say because Price Picks isn't the greatest, props, daily fantasy sports book. Or it's not even really a sports book, but daily fantasy apps to use when it comes to UFC, MMA, because their props are kind of like, their lines are questionable. And it's not, you're kind of getting screwed when you put these, lineups together for MMA, UFC because of the payouts. Like sometimes some of these lines you're getting plus money props and you don't even know it, and they're pricing it, engaging it as if it's like a minus 150. And if you parlay, a lot of these plus money props like you would on a sports book, it's not nowhere near the same payout as a sports book. So you're definitely getting screwed on your payout. And also, they're very, very slow and delayed when putting out their MMA props. I feel like they base it, engage it on other DFS sites like your DraftKings Sportsbook or your DraftKings Pick 6, whatever it's called, your Underdog Fantasy or Better Fantasy, Sleeper Fantasy. A lot of these other books, they kind of set the standard, and then Price Picks bases it off of that or gauges their own lines off of these other books because they're the more shopper books. But Price Picks, sometimes they nudge the lines like a little bit, like by 1 or 2, and so on and so forth. So, and they're very slow and delayed with putting out their props. Like they'll throw out, some props here and there for UFC early on in the week, whereas like Underdog Fantasy, they already have their full-blown list, and they have alternate lines too, which is good and cool. And they adjust their payout based on your alternate lines. So I would definitely recommend Underdog Fantasy or Better for something like this, because it's just not. And like they wait until Thursday or Friday. They wait till last second to upload more props. So, I mean, if I were to lean something here on Prize Picks for this fight, I don't have anything for the Stephanie Luciano fight. I definitely skipped over that. And plus, I don't really think they have anything for that fight besides maybe they have Fight Time. No, they don't have anything for that fight at all on here for the sports book. But for this Youssef Zalal fight, I would definitely lean towards his fantasy score. They haven't taken it off yet. His fantasy score is 86.5. And basically, they have Stephanie Luciano's fantasy score on here. So, but if you want to know how they score, the fantasy score, so basically, you every significant strike, you get 0.6 points. You get 6 points for a takedown. If they stuff a takedown, like a takedown defense, you get 3 points. If they go for an actual submission attempt, even if they don't get it, if they attempt a submission, they get 5 points. And if they knock somebody down, it's 12 points. And then based on the fight conclusion, so if they win in the first round finish, they get 100 points. Second round win, they get 75 points. Third round win, 50 points, so on and so forth. So each round that goes on, the less and less points they get, it diminishes. So then fourth round, if it's a 5-round fight, fourth round, it's 35. And fifth round, 25. And then if it's decision, you only get 20. So even though I think Youssef Zalal wins by decision, maybe he gets a submission attempt. I don't think he gets a knockdown. I think he can stuff a couple of takedowns. Maybe he gets 1 or 2 takedowns. Maybe gets like 40 significant strikes. I don't have the live math on me for you guys, but that's about 24 points, I believe. Because I think his significant strikes line on here is like 45 or something like that. So yeah, 45.5. I would lean slightly towards the under because I just think Youssef is going to go straight to the ground, take him down, and get him out of the way on the mat. So I would lean fantasy score over. 86 is kind of high. You're kind of hoping he gets a third round finish, or he's just super proactive on both the ground and the feet and wins a dominant unanimous decision victory. Other than that, probably a stay away. So my official pick, this is going to actually make my official card. I don't feel too good about it. It kind of gives me an irritable feeling in my gut. But we're going to lean Youssef Zalal. Safe play, money line, double chance. Safe play would probably be submission or decision. And I'll take Youssef Zalal by decision. All right, on to the next fight. Let's get back into it out of prize picks. On to the next fight, we got Jhonata, Diniz. I'm sorry, bro. Again, apologies on trying to pronounce your name. Versus Karl Williams. Now, this is on me and my fault alone, because I would address Karl Williams as Karl Chaos Williams. I did not know Karl Williams and Chaos Williams were completely two different people. Okay, I didn't know Chaos Williams, that was actually his name. Or I don't know if it's like his nickname and they just kind of label it as his first name and it just stuck. But yeah, Karl and Chaos Williams are completely two different people. I thought they were the same person, and I kept addressing Karl Williams as Karl Chaos Williams for whatever reason. But, I mean, it's respectable enough to call him Karl Chaos Williams, and rightfully so, because, I mean, he doesn't fight chaotic, or he doesn't fight, like, crazy enough to warrant, like, a lot of finishes and stuff like that. But he does put on some good fights. He does put on some good scraps, even if it's boring and he goes the distance and doesn't get the finish. Hey, Karl Williams is definitely one of those guys who is very high IQ. He does whatever it takes to win. He just wants to win and be victorious. He's made that clear cut. He's very monotone. He's very mellowed out. I mean, just look at his fight picture alone. He's just so straight-faced, stone-faced. I mean, if Alex Pereira wasn't known as the stone-faced, straight-faced guy, this guy would definitely be the main promoter on brand for this guy. Doesn't have much emotion. Very mellowed out, monotone guy. Just only cares about winning and winning only. Doesn't care if it's sexy, flashy. Doesn't care if it's by outstanding finish. Doesn't care about any of that at all. He just wants to win if it by any means necessary. If that means he has to lay on your ass for 25 minutes and make it boring, or 15 minutes, whatever it is, he'll do that. If he's got to spark you up on the feet in these exchanges and avoid getting clipped, he'll do that. You know, if he has to submit you, if he has to knock you out, he will do whatever it takes to win. And I truly mean that. Now, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm not going to rant too much on this fight, because my clear-cut decision has already been made up on the fight when looking into the research and earlier today and diving deep and digging deep into this into this fight. And my clear decision here is Karl Williams. I will comfortably lay, that's going to be my official pick. Clear cut, straight to the bone. I will lay that minus 210 price, or lay it in a 2-3 teamer. I would probably, now how he wins, I don't know. I want to say he can pull off a submission, in my opinion. It's very capable. I don't know. Maybe he could knock him out, but so far in the UFC, Karl Williams has not won inside the distance at all. He's 4-0, or technically 3-0, because one of his wins was Dana White Contender Series back in 2022. But all three of his fights, he's became victorious, and all of his fights in the UFC promotion so far have been by way of unanimous decision. What the fuck? I can't even speak. Decision. Because, I mean, he's leaving no doubts to the ref. He's winning in dominant, clear-cut fashion. He leaves no hypotheticals, no doubt in mind, so he hasn't had any worries or scares about split decision. Now, when I looked into Jhonata Diniz, Jhonata is 7-0. He's flawless, right? Which warranted a little bit of respect, but when I looked a little closer and dug a little deeper into it, Jhonata Diniz, I believe this is his UFC debut, if I'm not mistaken, or his second fight on the promotion. Okay, yeah, technically his second fight on the promotion. He has one fight in the Dana White Contender Series, and he has one fight earlier this year, back in April 27th of this year, where he won by knockout. So both of his wins, he's won by finish, and he's been victorious by knockout. But to be fair, in Dana White Contender Series, he fought a guy, and I think his name is Eduardo Neves, who is so-so. I mean, he's okay. 7-3 record, 7-1 by knockout. He's been submitted twice, and in his last 5 fights, he's 2-3, and he's lost both of his chances in the Dana White Contender Series. So anytime he tries to step up and make a name for himself and take that next step forward into the big leagues, he hasn't been successful. So and his only knockout loss is to Jhonata Diniz. So, I mean, that's, I guess, respectable, but for the most part, he doesn't have really any notable, victories or wins worth noting. Like, not big names or not great fighters, kind of like a little bit of trash cans. I mean, his last fight, he knocked out Austin Lane, and Austin Lane's like the biggest trash can of trash cans. One of those few former NFL football players, that they thought, okay, maybe I'm good at this football thing. It probably will transition to the MMA scene. And time and time again, a lot of these football fighters, they're good, training partners. They're good at their local gym, sparring or, sprawling around. They make good partners. Does not mean they make great fighters. That NFL game is nowhere near, this MMA stuff. When you guys got MMA fighters that are practitioners and they know how to pick you apart, you may be a heavier dude, you may be the bigger dude, you may be the stronger dude, but none of that really matters in very technical MMA when you know ins and outs of how to put people away. So one of the few NFL fighters that try to make the transition to the MMA scene and just not been successful at all. I mean, 12-5, okay, decent record. You go to the UFC, you're 1-2-1 in the UFC. You've been knocked out 5 times. So when you've had a lot of wear and tear on your head, you got like susceptible to CTE in football. That means your chin is very susceptible to getting clipped, especially in guys who have 3-4 ounce gloves and knocking your head off. So yeah, not big wins for Jhonata Diniz. Is it good stepping stone fights to get notoriety underneath his name? Sure, absolutely, it's respectable. I mean, 7-0, and all 7 of his victories have come by way of knockout. So he's definitely not a ground game guy. That's not what he's known for at all. And I mean, if you look at his fight before Dana White Contender Series, he knocked out somebody, and it was their retirement fight. Now, his regional scene isn't one of the more respectable regional scenes. Sure, it's in Brazil. I mean, Brazil has some killers, some dogs there, but it's still not one of the top regional scenes to look after. I mean, he fought in Spartacus, he fought in Immortal FC, and he bounced around. And then Metanoia Fight Combat, I can't pronounce that. But yeah, he fought people that aren't really like all that. I think his best victory is probably Yerme Lazzarini or Carlos Nascimento Jr., and that's saying something. I mean, he fought a guy who was going to retire, knocked him out, and he also, fought Austin Lane and knocked him out. In all of his fights, he's won by first round knockout, and the only time, or only one of his fights, it made it past the first round, and that was against Austin Lane. So that's impressive for Austin Lane to make it past the first round with this guy before ending up getting dropped. He's fighting at a Santa Fe team. So I don't know if that's in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've never really heard of this team. I'm not really well versed with them. I don't really think they're a threatening team or a top team to take notice about. So I mean, he's not really fighting with the top team or top camp. He's 33 years old and only has 7 fights to his name. Has only been fighting since 2022. So I mean, it's almost like too little, too late. He kind of needs to get it going. He's a little rushed and amped up before his window of opportunity closed. He has like probably maybe 3 to 4 years, 5 years at best of good MMA left in him before, it's time to turn a new page or look towards a new league. And he's taking a big step up and a big leap in competition. This is probably the best. Actually, no, it's not probably. It is the best fighter he's ever fought in his MMA career and his MMA resume in Karl Williams. And Karl Williams is really good. He's really polished on the feet, right? He's not a dumbass in the heavyweight division to like, okay, let's just stand and bang and swing like a bunch of, big old beasts, right? And just let hands go and throw. He doesn't really throw wild. He, stays polished in the pocket, stays, I wouldn't say his head movement's all there. He tries to have it there. He has a nice jab, a little snappy jab, doesn't try to do anything crazy. He kind of does like a little bit of point fighting, like your Sugar Ray Leonard, your little tap, and make it look good towards the scorecards for the judges, right? But where he shines and flourishes is where Jhonata Diniz struggles and doesn't. So Jhonata Diniz is definitely known as a kickboxer. Never gone to the ground, never been tested to the ground, because there's fighters that have maybe tried to take him to the ground and they couldn't find success because they're getting sparked and clipped out or whatever it may be. So if Karl Williams can, find decent exchanges, right, tag up Jhonata Diniz, and Jhonata Diniz, just based off of his profile picture, I mean, this guy just looks angry. He just has a mad, angry stone face, right? Tries to pull off the Alex Pereira look, evil, mean guy. Where I feel like some of that anger has shown in his fight tapes where if he gets tagged up, it's over for him. Mental is chalked. Mental is out the way. Once he starts getting pieced up on the feet, or, I mean, like I said, we don't know what he looks like on the ground because he's never been taken there or tested there. But I'm going to assume if he struggles on the ground and he's laying on his back for a long period of time, he can become extremely frustrated. He's like, this sucks. I don't want to be here. I don't like being here. Right? And anytime a fighter gets extremely frustrated really easily and their mental goes out the window, that technically means their fight plan, their game plan, their fight IQ goes out the window with them, and they just abandon all whatever and they try to, get back to their feet, right? So I'm curious to see how that shapes up because style makes fights. We got your typical, wrestler, ground game guy versus your kickboxer, striker who's just sparking people out left and right. Now, Karl Williams has a solid chin. He has a respectable chin. He's been sparked before, tagged up. He survived. He's, been pretty flawless so far in his career, 10-1. His only loss is by sub, which is funny because for a guy who has solid ground game, he has been submitted in the regional scene. And it was a title fight back in B2 Fighting Series in Kentucky, which is not a good look. He lost by triangle choke to Jason Butcher, but that was all the way back in 2021. So he's had 3 years to improve, and I think he has huge, significant improvements. And he's also fighting out of Extreme Couture, which is one of the top teams out there in the world. I would argue top 10, borderline top 10, definitely top 15 teams in the world. So he has a great, high IQ, great, team, a fight camp with a good roster of fighters that know what they're doing. They know how to prepare. So they're solid there. And I think what they know this Jhonata guy has not been tested on the ground. And I think that's where they're going to take it there. I think Karl Williams is going to try and find himself on the feet a little bit. Realize, like, okay, maybe this guy is a little dangerous, a little wild. He has some heavy hands. Let's not take it there. I don't want to get chin or clipped here. I think I see a repeat from last week's fight with Gaziev. I had Gaziev sprinkled inside the distance, which was disappointing to see, where he just laid on Dontel Mays and dominated him for 5 minutes, or 3 rounds for 5 minutes each round for the whole fight, 15 minutes. I think we see a little bit of a repeat here. I think Karl Williams immediately takes him to the ground, keeps him there, tries to look for a sub. Maybe he pulls off the sub. I don't see it because a lot of these heavyweight guys, I mean, majority of their fights really don't go the distance. We see time and time again, we see early finishes because when you're heavier, you have heavier hands, you're susceptible to more knockouts. You don't see a lot of high-level wrestling in the heavyweight division unless you have like these European foreigner guys. I mean, we're going to see it in the main event on this card with Tybura and Spivac, who have really, really good wrestling, really good jiu-jitsu. You just see a lot of stand and bang, right? You rarely see like wrestling and someone lay on them unless you're like Jailton Almeida, Karl Williams, another one of those guys, right? So if Jhonata Diniz doesn't knock out Karl Williams, which I highly doubt he does. I mean, even on the height, very even on the reach, similar in age. I mean, Karl Williams significantly slightly older. Both guys creeping up in their mid-30s, a little bit older guys, right? I mean, you got a 33-year-old guy, and this is where they say there's levels to this game, right? You have a guy who's 7-0, never really been tested outside the first round, has not been taken to deep waters, where Karl Williams definitely could take him to deep waters. But we don't know what his gas tank is like on the ground. Maybe he just quits and gives up because he just tires out from getting laid on for so long, right? And Karl Williams just holds him there with a lot of control time and dominates him on the ground and wins by boring decision. But Jhonata has not fought anybody notable, only has one fight to his name in the UFC. So, I mean, big jump. He's been successful so far, right? But again, has fought trash cans. This is his best opponent. And this is where the saying truly shows there's levels to this game because Karl Williams, 10-1, 4 more fights, despite having 1 loss by sub. So that's not really, noticeable because it's not like he got absolutely sparked and clipped. 3-0 by knockout. So, I mean, he definitely can knock people out, right? So he's done it before. He's definitely capable. And he just has great fight IQ. All around, he just is the clear-cut favorite heavy side. And for a guy who's sparking people left and right, you would think the books would take notice and put this fight as a pick'em or maybe like a little bit less favored in Karl Williams, because creeping up into the -200 is a little scary. I know Karl Williams opened up by like -180, but a lot of people are seeing the clear-cut side here. And Karl Williams' level of competition is by far way greater than Jhonata Diniz, even though it's not really a big, huge step up. He's fought some cans as well, but there is some notable names here, some stepping stone fights. Justin Tafa, he's not the better of the Tafa brothers, but still a recognizable good fight. He's fought Lucas Bresky. I mean, again, not a big name, but Lucas Bresky is a solid fighter. He's decent. He's pretty good. He's not bad. So that's another notable win. Chase Sherman, okay, and then Jimmy Lawson in the Contender Series. So it's like Karl Williams has the experience, the better fighting, better fighters he's fought, and Jhonata is the one taking the one leaps and bounds. So I mean, Jhonata is landing with higher volume per minute, but he's not as accurate. So my assumption is Diniz is he tries to swing wild, whereas Karl Williams, he's damn near landing as much strikes as he is per minute, similar to Jhonata Diniz, but he's also very more polished. Like I said, very more in the pocket with the jab, so he has way more accuracy, almost a 10% difference in the 60% versus 53, almost barely 50%, which is not good. Jhonata Diniz has no takedown game, whereas Karl Williams, high volume takedown, he's averaging 5 takedowns a fight, which is crazy, and he's landing half of them. I mean, a quarter of his, takedowns are submission attempts. Yeah, I'm going to take Karl Williams. I rambled on enough about all the possible outcomes he can win. I think he just has more pathways to victory, whereas Jhonata Diniz, he just has a swinger's chance. It's you're either knocked out or not, and if he doesn't knock you out, there's nothing left for him. He has nothing else going for him, whereas Karl Williams can keep him at bay on the ground game. He can match him on the feet, right? I'm going to take Karl Williams here. I don't think Karl Williams get knocked out. I'd be surprised if he does. And if he does, hey, tip the cap. Hats off to Jhonata Diniz. Maybe he's a force to be reckoned with. He's notable because I believe Karl Williams, if he's not a ranked fighter in the heavyweight division, he's definitely borderline close to a ranked fighter. And if Karl Williams wins this fight, I think that puts him close in the heavyweight division. Right now, with where the heavyweight division at, it's kind of like Stonewall. It's an okay division. It's kind of lackluster, right? Everything seems about like just super flat right now. It's just Aspinall, Jones, and who else, right? I mean, there's some notable guys, but I think Karl Williams is one of those guys who can creep up into the rankings and make a name for himself a little bit and hang around that 10 to 15 range spot. He's definitely good. And he's only going to get better. So maybe this puts him close to the rankings, if not in the rankings, with a victory over a guy like Jhonata Diniz. So yeah, I'm going to take Karl Williams by victory. How he wins, though, I'm probably going to lean. And again, it's probably going to be another fight by decision here. As boring as it is, we're probably going to see a lot of decision fights here. The way these Apex events have been matched up recently, we've been seeing a lot of even kill fights, despite what the odds may seem. So we see a lot of fights just go the distance, which I know it's a little boring, and not a lot of people want to see that. I mean, unless it's a high volume, high class, fight where both fighters are getting sparked up, they're doing well on the ground, high volume, sprawling, striking, whatever. Then that's a respectable fight. But sometimes you're going to see a lot of these fights, where in the heavyweight division, where a guy his game plan is just to lay on you and keep you there and not let you get up. So I think that's what Karl Williams does. It's plus money. If Karl Williams does win, I think he's live for a submission. That plus 800 price is a little intriguing. It's a little spicy. Jhonata Diniz, again, his chin hasn't been tested, so we don't know if he hasn't been sparked before, so we don't know what to expect. But, I mean, both guys are pretty even kill on the price tag for each other to knock each other out, which is as expected in the heavyweight division. But I just have a vision of this fight playing out where Karl Williams takes him down, dominates, keeps him there, and submits him. So to get plus 800, you could probably get insane odds as like a round 2, round 3 sub. If Karl Williams doesn't knock him out and Jhonata Diniz survives the distance, basically we're banking on Jhonata Diniz to survive, because I mean, if we looked at the betting odds right here, we have over 2.5 rounds -110 to the under -120. So it's even kill. They slightly lean towards the under. They don't like this fight to go the distance at all. Plus 115, -150 to go to the distance. That's not a bad, parlay piece. This fight to go the distance at plus 115, you get plus money. We're banking. If you don't like the Karl Williams side and you lean towards Jhonata Diniz, right? Or you just can't get there at all with both fighters, then just sprinkle some plus money on the fight to go the distance and enjoy. You don't have to pick a side to win. You're just basically rooting for both guys to not finish or kill each other. And sometimes that's more fun to getting on a side that way or playing a prop angle that way than it is taking a side and getting burned if you're not too in love with it. But I'm going to take Karl Williams, and we will round out that fight as we move on to the next fight on the card. All right, we're moving on to the next fight on the card, which is the fourth and final fight on the prelims. So quick, easy, early prelims, getting them out the way here. And we got Karol Rosa taking on Pannie Kianzad in the women's bantamweight division. I'm not going to, rant, linger too long on the fight like I've done previous fights. We're going to try and burn and move this quickly and try to get to this main event. We're already an hour and so and some change long into the episode. Hey, that's okay. Anyways, we got Karol Rosa taking on Pannie Kianzad. I don't know. I apologize for butchering your name. Swedish girl taking on a Brazilian girl. Interesting matchup here. We got the European taking on the slums of Brazil here. So getting it out the mud here. I'm just going to get clear cut, straight to the chase, straight to the point again. I'm taking Karol Rosa. I'm clear as day on the Karol Rosa side. I don't know if it's going to make my official card. It's going to be close. Oh, by the way, last fight, Karl Williams is making my official card. So Karl Williams and Youssef Zalal making the official card. They got the green light go. Definitely Luciano was close, but the way women's fights have been hosing me and burning me, I think I'm going to chill and stay away from women's fights. Maybe I do a long shot parlay and I sprinkle the side that I like for fun. But you're going to notice here, this is the fourth fight in a row where we've taken the favorite. And you're going to notice that where I like a lot of the chalk heavy favorites. It's not my personal favorite thing to do. I don't like doing it. But sometimes it's just the side to go. It's just the side to be on, to take the favorite side. If I get hosed and burned by an underdog, so be it. I'm going to stick to my guns, stick to my sides. It's not the first time that's happened to me before, especially in the fight business, in the MMA game. And it's not going to be the last time. I was on Bilal Muhammad, 2 cards ago, and I hosed everybody in the public. Everyone was just thinking hometown crowd buff. They were disrespecting, downplaying Bilal. I knew what Bilal was capable of. But I'm a Bilal fan, but as of recently, I kind of turned my ears off to Bilal with the way he's talking reckless and crazy, talking shit. He's disrespecting my king, Kamaru. He's disrespecting my boy, my sweet king, Volk. I just can't have it. I'm more of a Volk fan and Kamaru fan than I am a Bilal fan. So I would like to see that fight maybe one day. Maybe Kamaru Usman down the line or soon. That fight happens. I think Kamaru actually wins that. I think Bilal is the better wrestler, but both guys are just as strong. Maybe Kamaru's a little bit stronger. And I think Kamaru probably better hands. I think he has heavier hands than anybody in that division. So, Bilal hasn't been finished or sparked like that. And Leon Edwards definitely wasn't going to be the guy to do that. But if Bilal thinks he's going to stand on the feet and strike with Kamaru, he's greatly mistaken. But that's nor here or there. We're focusing on the Karol Rosa fight. Let's not get sidetracked or side rant on that. But yeah, we're here with Karol Rosa in the bantamweight division, 135. Got the bigger, heavier girls. I think this is the heaviest weight class of all women's MMA. I think this is Raquel Pennington's weight division, which is the girl that just came out of PFL, Kayla Harrison, which I would absolutely love to see Kayla Harrison fight Raquel Pennington. I think she just destroys him. I think Kayla Harrison can be champion in the UFC for a very, very long time. Raquel Pennington is so bad. She's so trash. She should not be champ. She's literally only champ because the situation was reluctant and ended up played in her hand and played in her favor. It is what it is. We can bitch and complain all we want, but she's champ or interim champ, whatever. Is she official champ? I don't know. So Kayla Harrison just needs to hurry up and win her next fight. I think she's scheduled to fight Ketlin Vera, and that's gonna be a good fight. Gonna get tested, but I think she wins that one and she moves on and takes that belt from Raquel Pennington. Because if she wins this fight, that title fight, she's got to get catapulted to that title fight right away. It's the only fight that makes sense. If not, maybe one more fight and she gets there. So I don't think Dana White's going to keep her down on these, lower tier fights for long. I think he wants her to be champ, so on and so forth. We all know it. They know it. Hey, that's for the company behind the scenes. But little height differential here, 5'7" to 5'5", so 2-inch height advantage for Pannie, and she's But despite that height advantage, she doesn't have the reach advantage. That goes in favor of Karol Rosa, but not anything significant, only 1.5 reach advantage. So nothing to worry about there. She does have also the age advantage, 3-year age gap, but again, this is an age gap that doesn't really alarm me, or I'm not taking note on. This is about even kill. Both same stance, orthodox. Karol Rosa, definitely more of the heavier striker on the feet, the better striker on the feet, more the technical polished fighter. Pannie, she's okay. She's all right. Nothing to write home about. She lands a lot per minute, but nothing damaging or nothing crazy to warrant or be scared about. She's landing damn near 5 strikes per minute. You want to round up, I always do. That's just how my math checks out. But in those 5 strikes, she's landing barely, half of them. And whereas Karol Rosa is landing 6 strikes, so, 1 more strike, 1.5 more strikes than her opponent, but she's landing with insane accuracy. So to have high volume and land with accuracy, that's absolutely beautiful to look at. And also, she's just all around the more complete, better fighter, in my opinion. And, she has more high volume takedown averages per fight, which I don't even think Pannie actively looks for takedowns or tries to. And if she does, she's really not successful because a lot of her opponents that she does fight, she doesn't find takedown success because she keeps fighting these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners that just keep stuffing her takedowns and defending them, which her matchmaking, man, has been unfortunate and sucks for her. But it is what it is. She has a respectable record to back it up and warrant these fights. But I think this is, like I said, again, going back to levels of this game, and Karol Rosa is levels above Pannie. I'm not a big Pannie fan at all. I watched her tape, kind of sloppy MMA, and she's had fortunate matchmaking to where she's had this, buffed up record, be 17-8. If she fought anywhere near competent or decent leveled opponents, shit, she might be dropped by the UFC company by now. If not, she would already had been. And she would be like 14-12 or something like that, or 12-12, some terrible record. But she's fought cans, took advantage of those cans, won with her IQ wise. But I don't think that's going to go in her favor here. Karol Rosa, very aggressive. I like the way she fights. She fights very polished. She can get very wild at times, but sometimes that wildness, plays into her factor. Her team, she's coming out of the fight camp of Piranha Vale Tudo. A notable team, notable camp. I'm semi-familiar with them. They're still not like a top prominent team, but they're solid, they're respectable. But yeah, Karol Rosa, 17-6. She's only been finished twice, so 4 of her fights she's lost by decision. 2 of her fights she has lost by submission, 2-2 by sub, 4-0 by TKO. And in her last 5, she is 2-3 in the UFC. Not good. Not something that you want to see her write home about. She's a Muay Thai, specialist, but she does have some Brazilian background to her, whereas Pannie, there's really not much ground game to her. She's definitely all striking on the feet, and I think with Karol Rosa, I think she's going to learn how to keep her distance here. I think Karol Rosa is going to be on the outside coming in. I mean, that's what I expect her team to make her do. I don't think she wants to be the inside going out and attacking Pannie on her back foot and progressing towards her. I think she wants the outside pushing her towards inwards. I know most coaches, most teams, most fighters I'm saying it backwards, right? They want you to, the opposite. They want the opposite to happen. They want you to be on the inside, applying pressure, pushing him out and on their back foot, regressing, backpedaling. Versus they don't want you being on the one on the outside doing that, right? So I know people are going to disagree with me and be like, oh, Trent, what are you talking about? You're saying it the wrong way or backwards. No. I'm definitely saying it the right way. I think the game plan here is to keep Pannie retreating on the inside, right? Keep her in where you can keep her in motion. Close the window, close the gaps. Don't let her extend and get out to you. Don't let her be the one on the inside advancing towards you. You play your space, right? Karol Rosa stays on the outside, spaces, tires her out. I think she has the better I almost said pancake gas tank than Pannie, right? Exhaust her, keep your feet moving, stay lateral. Keep making her work, keep making her come to you, but also every time she comes to you, make her regress and stay in that center, right? Most people say that doesn't work, don't do that. I think that's the clear-cut game plan for Karol Rosa is stay on the outside, attack her going into the inside, stay there, stay aggressive, keep almost like a smash burger, smash patty, just keep her there, and keep exhausting her, right? Stay there, and make Pannie work because Pannie I'm not too high on her gas tank. I mean, she survives, right? She goes to decision. So does Karol Rosa. Like I said, most of these girls have solid gas tanks. That's the respectable part of their game. A lot of their fights, they go the distance, they go decision. Yeah, Karol Rosa, she's lost to all 5 of her last 5 fights have gone the distance. She lost unanimously to McMahon back in 2022. She won by majority decision to Landsberg. I don't even think she's with the company anymore, so it can. She lost by unanimous decision to Natalie Dumont. I think her name's Natalia Dumont, Natalie Dumont. And then she went to split decision. She eked out a close one versus Santos again, and then she lost by unanimous decision to Irene Aldana. I mean, some of the bigger names in the company, right? Some of the better girls that Karol Rosa has fought and has expected to lose to, she has lost to. But some of the trash cans she's fought and expected to beat, she's taking care of business. So she kind of evens out. She's even kill. Sometimes that's just the way the matchmaking and cookie crumbles. It's just like the fighters you're supposed to take care of, you do that. The fighters that are expected and supposed to beat you, especially on the fighting odds, hey, you do that. But at least you're making it somewhat of a fight, making them work for it, making them earn it. So some of the better fighters that she's fought, especially Irene Aldana, who's pretty good, they're making them work for it. But before she started reaching her losing streak, so in the UFC company, she started back in 2019, so a little bit right before COVID hit. And she started out hot. Karol Rosa was looking like one of the more prominent prospects coming in, and she was 5-0 before she reached her first loss to Sarah McMahon. So right now she's 7-3 in the company. She has 10 fights to her name, so not bad, right? And then in her regional scene, she was 10-3. So again, not bad. And she's lost 2 by submission, never been knocked out, so we're not worried about that there. And she's knocked people out herself 4-0. And I'm not gonna say she can knock out, Pannie. I mean, I'm not gonna doubt it. It's in the realm of possibilities. But if we want to talk about like mathematical percentage or chances that she does knock her out, it's probably like 30-40%, maybe a little bit less, maybe more on the 30% side or less. So I think this is gonna go the distance. I think she just outstrikes Pannie despite Pannie's strength to her game being on the feet. I think Karol Rosa is going to keep her at distance. And if it goes to the ground, Pannie has no chance, okay? Karol Rosa's all around way better on the ground. And maybe her team cooks up a game plan that involves taking Pannie to the ground and just dominating her there, get a ground and pound finish or a cheeky little live sub. I don't think, Karol Rosa has it in her chops to get a finish here against Pannie. And Pannie, I don't think she's been finished. I'm looking at her profile right now. Oh, I backtrack what I said. She's 0-3 by sub, so that's definitely her weakness. Her ground game is nowhere near at all there for her. And she's 3-1 by knockout, so she's been knocked out before. So like I said, can Karol Rosa possibly do it? Yeah, especially as a Muay Thai fighter. I think Pannie doesn't have like the kicks in her game at all. She's not as balanced of a fighter in terms of the kicking, strike part of her striking game. I think she's just pure boxing that way, and her kicking's not really effective. Whereas Karol Rosa, she's just all around complete striker. She has the hands, she has the feet, she has the kicking part to her game. So that helps in her aspect. Again, this is another one of those fights where I see more pathways to victory for Karol Rosa than I do Pannie. And when you have a fighter that's completely well-rounded on the feet and on the ground, and your opponent is one-dimensional, they just get picked apart piece by piece, limb by limb. It's like you're just getting fed to the wolves. And how I see this fight, I mean, Pannie, in her last 5 fights, she's also 2-3 like our girl Karol Rosa. So this is a fight, and it's going to be a war of attrition between both girls of who want it more, because both girls are probably, I don't want to say Karol Rosa is on the limb of getting cut by the UFC roster or getting dropped, because she's had prominent UFC success before, so her resume speaks for herself, where Dana White's going to defend her and back her, and if she wins this, she'll probably get another contract or so, maybe or so. So it's respectable with her resume. I mean, she's 7-3 in the UFC, so it's not like she's completely trash. It's just recent times that Karol Rosa has found a little bit of struggles. Maybe she gets back on the win column here. She desperately needs it. Whereas Pannie, she has shown no signs of significant success. Maybe she comes out a little bit hungrier, a little bit more wherewithal, and that she kind of come out and wants it more and is fighting for it more. Because let's be honest, if she loses here, she'll probably most likely get dropped or cut. It looks like it. And also, Pannie doesn't really have like a recognizable, notable team behind her. She's fighting out of Arte Suave Copenhagen, not a team I'm familiar with. A Swedish girl, fighting out of Copenhagen, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Copenhagen is in the Netherlands. Uh, don't quote me on that, or Denmark or something like that. I probably look like a big idiot right now to a lot of you viewers watching. You're probably laughing at me because my geographical knowledge isn't completely there just yet. And to be fair, it's late at night. I'm a little tired, and I played pickleball before recording this episode, so my brain might be a little foggy. But anyways, yeah, I mean, she doesn't have a really good team, and let's be honest, there's no really big Swedish fighters that are notable. I believe, except, I mean, Alexander Gustafsson was Swedish. I think he was Swedish or Danish or Denmark or something like that. I think he's Swedish. I have to go double check. I mean, he's the only notable fighter in the history of UFC MMA that I know of, and he's borderline Hall of Famer. If he's not in the Hall of Fame, he should be close to it. I mean, he's probably the best fighter that's never held the belt or touched the belt in the history of the UFC. It's probably like him, Dustin Poirier, Gaethje's up there. He's probably top 5 all time in fighters that have notable resumes that never held the belt. So, and to be fair, he was fighting a doping John Jones, which sucked, but it is what it is. It's unfortunate. It's written in the past now. It's history. So, but yeah, she debuted into the UFC. Pannie did back in 2019. So both girls came in around the same time. I would say Pannie has a little bit more fights underneath her belt in the UFC. If not, they have the same amount. Oh, they're about similar. Yeah, she's fought in the UFC for 9 fights, technically 10, so about the same if you want to count the Ultimate Fighter finale she had back in 2018. So I mean, if you look again, this is kind of an even fight in terms of like MMA math and history, like opponents, because Pannie, the fighter she's expected to lose to, she lost to, and the trash cans she was expected to beat, she beat, right? And she found her groove and found some rhythm. She had a little, stint where she had a little nice win streak, just like our girl, Karol Rosa did. But yeah, she debuted into Ultimate Fighter finale. She lost back in 2018 to Macy Chiasson, and we see where Macy Chiasson now. Macy Chiasson hit a little bump in the road, excuse me, and she found a struggle. She found the struggle bus and was like struggling to get into the win column. Was losing here and there, very roller coastery. She had a losing streak, and then she got back to the grind. And look where she's at now. She's threatening to be a title contender. She looks really, really good, and she absolutely destroyed that girl's face open in her last fight. I had Macy Chiasson going by decision, and the girl's okay and willing to go to the distance and keep fighting because they had round 3 left, and it looked like she could survive. But the doctor said the gash was too big, and it's like, let the girl fight. She wants to go on her sword. She was hyping up the crowd, giving the people what they wanted, a fan favorite, putting on a show, and they stopped the fight. I hate when they do that shit. A bullshit early stoppage. It is what it is. I'm not a doctor, so. But yeah, loses to Macy, right? Then she goes to regionals, and then she comes back into the UFC. Not too much longer, not too much later, and then she lost by decision to Julia Avila. She's like, okay. Then she found a 4-fight win streak. Jessica Rose Clark, Correa, Eubanks, Davis, all girls who I believe are not on the roster anymore at all, and that was just only 3-4 years ago, back in 2019, 2020. So, I mean, it's crazy how quick times have changed, And then she's got Alexis Davis. Oh, excuse me. Then she fought Raquel Pennington, lost to her, gave her a fight though, went the distance. And then Lena Landsberg, I don't think she's in the promotion anymore, who I believe also Karol Rosa beat. And then her last 2 fights, I mean, she's just getting fed to the wolves, and that's a sign that tells me Dana White's done with her. They want to be done with her, move on from her, and drop her out of the company and corporation. I'd be surprised if she loses here that she stays, and if she does stays and loses again, that she stays around for much longer. I would be very, very shocked and surprised at all, especially when you're 32, 33, you're not really putting on exciting fights, and you're losing in dominant fashion. Yeah, she lost to Ketlin Vieira by decision unanimously, and then Macy submitted her. So I mean, both of the two of her three submission losses have been to Macy, and then she got submitted in regionals. So I mean, outside of those two submission losses to Macy, all of her fights in the UFC have gone the distance. She survived. So she's either winning unanimously or losing unanimously in dominant fashion. And three of her fights she's lost by decision, and so she's won by more decision than she has lost. But yeah, I think this fight goes the distance. I think Karol Rosa wins unanimously in dominant fashion. I'd be really shocked. But I mean, looking at the fighting odds, again, minus 145, they're favoring towards this fight going the distance again. I mean, over 2.5 rounds is minus 650. That's crazy to me. And then the fight to go the distance is minus 475. So I mean, the odds makers and the books, they agree on this fight going the distance. Both girls can survive. I don't think both girls have the power to put each other away. The only thing that scares me and that's very threatening is Karol Rosa submitting Pannie. Because if it goes to the ground, I think Karol Rosa can find success. I don't think Karol Rosa is a full-blown Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. She has, a little bit of grappling to her. So I don't think nothing to warrant or be alarmed about that she can put away Pannie. And I don't think Pannie wants to go out that way and get finished again and come off of back-to-back submission losses. I think she wants to try to at least make it a fight, because if she gets finished again, there's no doubt in my mind she should get cut. But yeah, they like both girls either side to win by decision, favoring the Karol Rosa side. That's probably where I'm going to lean. So I think all four fights, excuse me, and I don't see any finishes in the prelims. I think all four fights are going to the distance, especially with two girl fights. The only fights that are threatening to get finishes here is, if the Carl Williams heavyweight fight, Youssef Zalal fight. I don't think Jarno Errens goes out like that, though, unless we get some crazy gash or cut that warrants a doctor stoppage. So hopefully it doesn't lead to that, or like a headbutt or something weird where we get a no contest eye poke. Maybe, I don't know. And then Karol Rosa getting a submission. I mean, Karol Rosa plus 900 submission is very tasty, and I mean they're not doubting her to get a knockout either at plus 750. Maybe ITD would be a cool live little sprinkle to look at. But if I were to lean either side, it'd probably be the submission side for Karol Rosa. Sprinkle a little bit on there. Maybe a sub or decision, double chance, safe prop. You can probably get a couple of cents off of that minus 220 money line price. But yeah, I'll lean Karol Rosa. Not going to be an official play. It's going to be my unofficial pick. I do like it a lot. The more and more I look at it, it's close to making my official card. But again, with the way women's MMA has been burning me and hosing me, we are just going to stay away from completely. Maybe in a long shot parlay, we'll go that route. But yeah. All right, moving on to the next fight. We got Toshiomi Kazama versus Charalampos Grigoriou. I think, if I pronounced both of their names right, more so the Grigoriou name right, tip of the cap. Hats off to me, man. You gotta put some respect on that, because both names were hard as shit to pronounce. Okay, that was rough. I tried my best, but it is what it is. We are here now, and we got in. I'm just gonna say Shara. I'm just gonna call him Shara for short, and then we got Kazama. I'm gonna say Kazama because his last name is easier to pronounce than his first name. Okay, no respect to either guy. I'm sorry. I want to butcher your name in case you guys ever see this, but yeah, I'm gonna lean the Shara side now. This is kind of scary for me because, again, this is one of those fights where at first when I was looking at it, just raw, I was leaning towards the Kazama side, and I still kind of in my heart feel that way, right? In my heart, I want to see Kazama win. I have a special soft spot for Japanese people, Japanese culture, their country, and their fighters. And Japan is producing some insane athletes across the board. They're coming up in the basketball scene somewhat a little bit. That's respectable and noticeable. I mean, they're coming up in combat sports. I mean, they're taking over boxing with Inoue, who's absolutely insane right now. And they're taking over MMA with a lot of these guys up and coming on the scene. Maybe it's because, that sumo wrestling is transferring over to these guys that aren't as heavy, as big, but they're just as strong and more cut up with muscle. Maybe it's, anime. A lot of these people love their anime, and like Goku is just channeling these inner beasts, and they're motivating them to get in the gym and work and you name it, they're doing it, and they're taking over baseball too. Asian always been baseball has been always an Asian sport. I mean, you see Otani, you see Yamamoto coming up. A lot of these guys, big prominent names, prospects in baseball. So, hey, Japan's coming on, right? This has been a long time coming for years now. Japan getting up there with the rest of the world in terms of competition and athletics and sports. So cool it's very, very cool to see. It's very, very respectable. So that's why betting with my heart, I want to see Kazama win. Maybe I do sprinkle for funsies on his money line. I want to deep down, I want to root for him. But with my brain, when I took a closer look at this, I'm leaning the Shara side, and here's why. 14 fights for Kazama on his record and resume, and then 12 for Shara. 2 more wins, victorious, right? But that's just the makeup of having more fights underneath the belt. So they're about even kill. That doesn't scare me. About even resume, both same height, both in the 135 bantamweight division. This fight doesn't have really any major or big implications in the bantamweight division towards like title contention or rankings or anything like that, right? I think it's more so for each individual fighter of progressing and getting better and working their way up. I think there's more fight implications here for the Kazama side because the UFC has not been too kind for him. He's been on the struggle bus. He's been having a hard time finding success. So I think with his back against the wall of potentially getting dropped from the roster, from the company, he wants to do everything in his power he can to not let that happen. But hey, and the powers that may be, it's sometimes it's out of our control and it goes up to, somewhere else, right? I mean, you can do as much as you can as you want to control the situation, but in fighting, sometimes it's just a minor mistake, a minor inconvenience, minor anything, just in any sport, anything minor that can affect the outcome of the result that you're expecting or want. It just takes just that much, right? Just that much. So both guys fighting at an orthodox stance, so even there, despite being same height, Kazama has a 1.5 inch reach advantage, so nothing scary or alarming me there to warrant that. Both guys are kind of landing the same volume. Nowhere near does Grigoriou have the same accuracy. I think Kazama has more of the polished accuracy. Kazama doesn't have heavy hands, though. He doesn't really hit hard. He's more of like, your polished point fighter striking. If he throws wild and lands wild, he can land with heavy hands, but it's not going to be very accurate. So I think his more accuracy there is the jabbing, and stuff like that. And I'm not too familiar with the Shara side. I haven't looked that much into his fight tape or, who he is or what, his expected pathway of victory is, right? I mean, and he's fighting out of Cyprus, a country that I've never really heard of. If I'm not mistaken, Cyprus is near like Greece over there and those islands over there. I'm not entirely too sure. Don't quote me on that. Again, I might have just struggled earlier in the episode with geography, so my geographical skills might be lacking right now. But it is what it is. And I'm gonna guess that it's near Greece because he has like a Greek type name. But yeah, I've never really seen this guy fight. And rightfully so. I don't know what he's like from his regional scenes, from his regional tape. He's only been in the UFC for 2 fights, technically 1, and he lost his UFC debut, right, to and Hiliger. I don't even think he's in the company no more, or maybe he is because that was only this year in 2024, earlier and back in March. And then in Dana White Contender Series, he was victorious fighting Smotherman. So, I mean, he lost to a guy in Chad and Hiliger, who's not really a prominent name, 37 years old, an older guy, right? A guy you probably should not be losing to. 13-7 record, 7-0 by knockout, 3-6 by sub. Not good on the ground at all. Older guy, and you lose to him as a striker. You get outstriked on the feet. So not a good look at all, which is kind of alarming for a guy who should have a dominant fashion win there. But with Kazama, I think the sports books and the odds makers are pricing this based off of recency bias, and rightfully so. You just don't know what you're going to get with Kazama. His chin has already been clipped and tested multiple times, more than once so far in the UFC, which is not a good thing not a good sight to see when backing a guy like that who's susceptible to getting clipped and knocked out at any given point in time, who doesn't have the greatest chin. And he got knocked out by guys who like aren't prominent, notable strikers or not like heavy hand hitters. They got clean shots on him that sparked him and dropped him and put him out. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's like getting knocked out in technicality boxing, right? He's just getting knocked out on a crazy wild swing and dropped. But yeah, I mean his takedown average 1.5 per fight, which is weird because most of these Japanese fighters, their wrestling and their ground game is their strong suit, right? We see it with Tatsuro Tara. We see it. There's another fighter who's ground game based, and you would think so because historically, with sumo wrestlers, right? That's the name of their game. So it's very weird to see a guy, a Japanese fighter, want to be on the feet, want to stand and bang. I don't know where he got that from, but he's semi a well-rounded fighter in terms of like he's complete on top and bottom, but I'm not going to say he's good, right? He is the younger fighter, has a 5-year age gap, pretty notable difference, a respectable difference to keep an eye on. 27 years old versus 32, but still younger in your earlier 30s. So I'm not too scared about that. So yeah, I mean, I was leaning towards dog and pass when I was looking at this, but again, I'm just gonna lean the favorite side just to lean that way because I just have a hard time backing a fighter who's been sparked and clipped multiple times already. And Shara looks like based off the stats, he has the better ground game, right? He's takedown averaging, damn near 4 takedowns a fight, and he's landing 80% of those takedowns. Really, really good. So high volume takedown, high accuracy, very high success rate. So maybe, he tries it with Kazama here. I don't think Kazama's all the way too bad on the ground. He definitely could get taken down, but I don't think Shara's gonna find success, submitting him because that's just not Shara's clear pathway to victory here. I mean, Kazama is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Grigoriou is a pure striker, is what they're saying. So definitely on the feet, especially with recent times, that should be the pathway to victory for Shara and his team. That they should be telling him that and sparking up Kazama on the feet. Because if you take down Kazama, that plays into his favor, plays into his backyard, and he's live for a submission finish, right? And maybe vice versa. Maybe Kazama switches it up. He knows he's been successful on the ground game before. It's there, despite Shara having high takedown volume, right? Maybe he's taking down some trash cans. So this is a step up in competition in terms of ground game. Shara hasn't fought a guy at this level of ground game. So I think he's going to be respectable and wary and cautious of that. And so is his team. They're not going to let him go out there and try and take down this guy without knowing what he's doing. And I think Kazama wants him to take him down, maybe, and then look for a submission attempt there. Or Kazama, with the way he's being sparked and clipped, he's proactively the one offensively looking for the takedown and offensively on the ground game more than defensively trying to bait him and fall into his trap. Who knows? Who knows what Kazama comes out here with? Because so far the ground game, I mean the stand and bang game hasn't been kind to him at all. That's not what he should be doing out there. And I think hopefully he knows that now and he looks to proactively be on the ground. And if he can negate and nullify Shara striking by just keeping on the ground and dominating him on the ground, right? Maybe he can squeak out a boring, decision victory here, kind of like what I expect Karl Williams to do with and his opponent. So, I mean, again, recency bias is telling us that the odds makers don't like Kazama just because of what's been going on with him. I think if he survives round 1 and doesn't get knocked out early like he's had in his last couple of fights, he's definitely a live dog, definitely a live threat. I just can't get there. I don't know. It's a very scary fight. In my opinion, this is truly 50-50 because style makes fights. I'm very intrigued to watch this fight. It's probably going to be one of my more favorite fights on the card because I'm just interested in see how this shapes up and plays out. Because I truly don't know. Is the ground game going to win and negate the striking? Or is the striking just going to overpower Kazama again and just because Kazama, if he gets knocked out again, he's definitely dropped and cut from the roster. So he definitely has a lot more to play for here than Shara. Not saying Shara doesn't want to win or be victorious. It's just when you have a guy who's hungry and is back against the wall, it's hard not to lean towards that dog price. So I'm going to lean towards the Shara price, but I'm probably going to bet dog or pass here. I'm betting with my heart, maybe and slightly with my brain, but then I am with my brain. I'm not too familiar with this Shara guy. I don't know what he's capable of or what he can do. Maybe he just absolutely sparks Kazama and just leaves no doubt in my mind, right? But if this goes to the scorecards and Kazama can survive, the distance and make it interesting, he can pull off a split decision robbery or, maybe a unanimous decision. So I don't want to be there fading a Japanese fighter who's definitely capable of finding victory. And to be fair, Kazama, his first 2 fights, he fought Rinya Nakamura, he knocked out, and that was for, I think, the Contender Series, the winner of the Contender Series. And Nakamura, that's who's the other fighter. That's the other Japanese fighter that's notable on the ground game with Tatsuro Tara. Nakamura is just known as a ground game wrestler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, just like Tatsuro Tara. Doesn't really have heavy hands, right? Can he stand and bang and scrap? Absolutely. Not a knock to his stand-up game, right? But that's just not what he's known for. And he just blew Kazama's face off, just absolutely just landed a right hook wide. Boom. Done. Then you feed him to Garrett Armfield. So, I mean, his matchmaking hasn't been too kind to him. You're kind of feeding him to the wolves with some of these top notable guys, and he gets knocked out in the first round again to Garrett Armfield, which Garrett Armfield, that's what he's known for. Late first round, too. So he was doing well. He was surviving, and then it just became too much. Also, the other thing is the books are leaning heavier towards the Shara side is because Shara is more proactive, right? He's fought more recently. Kazama hasn't fought in over a year. His last fight was August 26th of last year. So sometimes you got to be cautious of those guys that take big layoffs because it's truly 50-50. You don't know what you're going to get with guys that have big layoffs like that. They either are laying off for a good reason. They're finding time to find their rhythm, their groove again. Figure out what they want to do, what they're trying to do, figure out their game plan, and become a better fighter. And other times when they have big layoffs, it's just because they're scared off, right? And especially when you've been knocked out back-to-back times in both of your fights, there's a little bit of a health scare factor, right? You want to recoup your mangled brains a little bit and not try to overdo it, overextend, and overexhaust yourself, because then you find yourself in a truly bad, medical situation there. So there's always that precautionary. But yeah, when you're not proactive, that truly hurts you in the company. So the fact that, he fought twice last year, so maybe if he doesn't get finished here and wins and finds success, he fights again later this year to end the year off strong. But yeah, when you're not proactive, you're not winning, that's a recipe of Dana White to give you the boot button, kick you out of the company. So Kazama has everything to lose, right? Shara really doesn't because he's still fairly new. So nothing's going to make an official bet here on my card. So yeah, this is going to be dog or pass. But I probably would bet Shara here. Yeah, to start out the main card, we're going to avoid anything. But yeah, no official play here. Let's move on to the next fight. All right, next fight on to the main card. We're closing out down to the home stretch. Shorter card. It's definitely going to be one of my shorter videos. I was hoping this video was an hour or less, but I rambled a lot longer than I expected. I can't believe it's already 2 hours. So, but definitely gonna, with recent times, this is gonna be one of my shorter episodes. Hey, it is what it is. If you guys like this, full, long-term, longer content version, let me know in the comment section below. But if the rambling or too much breakdown is much for you, and you like the shorter content form, let me know as well, because I can chop it up, edit it up to where it's definitely a lot shorter. I just like the longer format because maybe while you're driving around, you guys can listen to this like a podcast, watch it, so on and so forth. That's just me. All right, but next fight on the card, we got Yana Santos taking on Chelsea Chandler. Now, the odds on this one, very intriguing. This one is where I might lean towards a dog here. I think it's going to be the first dog that I lean truly officially on the card so far, because I think every fight I've taken the favorite, and rightfully so. So, yeah, we got Yana Santos taking on Chelsea Chandler, and I was looking at Yana Santos, 14-8 record, not bad. Nothing to write home about, nothing good, really, to talk about here with Yana Santos. Chelsea Chandler, who is 6-2. The thing that alarms me with Chelsea Chandler, you're 6-2, only 8 fights to your name, and you're already 33 years old. Whereas Yana Santos, 22 fights, 34 years old. So a girl who's only 1 year older than you, way more fights underneath her belt in her resume. So she clearly has the veteran experience, the fight experience underneath her belt. So I would lean towards fighting IQ towards her way. Chelsea Chandler is definitely, new to the whole ordeal, new to the game, and still trying to figure yourself out. When you're still, fresh, I'm not going to say young, but when you're still early into your UFC career, there's so much you're trying to do and trying to learn in such a short, condensed amount of time. Whereas Yana Santos has been there, done that. And when this line opened up, I think Yana Santos was like minus 180. I want to say she was when I first looked. And now she's dropped all the way drastically, 30 cents down to minus 150, where I can see the late sharp side coming in on Yana Santos. And again, I'm not going to have an official play on this fight because it's just another woman's fight. I don't want to get hosed or burned because I feel like if I take Chelsea Chandler, Yana Santos could win. It's kind of alarming to me is like, why is Yana Santos the favorited side when, resume wise, she shouldn't be? Chelsea Chandler should be the clear cut side here. And I could expect Yana Santos's price tag going down because I think people are going to try and take advantage of, Chelsea Chandler's price tag and bet her late before fight time. And they might bet Chelsea Chandler down to the favorite or to a pick'em maybe. Maybe it goes down like Yana Santos to minus 125 to Chelsea Chandler plus 115. Or at best, Chelsea Chandler is like the minus 110 favorite to Yana Santos plus 100. So I don't see a drastic shift and change, soon. Maybe, I don't know. But this is going to be a battle of the sharps versus, plus money value, where I could see like early on, the sharps, are on Chelsea Chandler's side. And then as her line has moved down, right, a lot of the sharps are going to come in late on Yana Santos. So Chelsea Chandler, 2-inch height advantage, but that doesn't mean nothing because both girls have the same reach advantage. And 1 year age difference, 135, the bantamweight division of women. So this is like the bigger girls. And Chelsea Chandler, I believe from what I've heard, she's out of Stockton, where the Diaz brothers are from. So she's definitely got that Stockton slap to her, right? You're a typical American girl fighter. And honestly, I feel like, has she fought Macy Barber? No, she hasn't. I feel like she's, for some reason, I don't know why, but I feel like I've seen her fight Macy Barber before. Maybe it's just me that wants to see her fight Macy Barber. I think that's actually a good fight for Macy Barber, is her and Chelsea Chandler going at it, having a great scrap match. I think Macy Barber absolutely destroys her, but we don't know until we see it. And I think that's a good, stepping stone fight for Macy Barber to get underneath her resume. So maybe down the line we'll see, especially if Chelsea Chandler comes off victorious here, moves on up into the division. But actually, I don't think they'll ever fight because I think, is Macy Barber 125? I think Macy Barber is 125. I thought she was 135. Hey, I might be over. Yeah, okay, so she's 125. So sorry, they'll never fight unless Macy Barber comes up or the other girl comes down. So unfortunate that we'll never see that fight, but it is what it is. But yeah, Yana Santos being the pure striker, whereas Chelsea Chandler, she's all around mixed martial artist. Chelsea Chandler, don't know what to make of her. Because, I mean, she's fighting at a Cesar. I mean, in Spanish it's pronounced Cesar, but Cesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu fight team. So, respectable. It's always respectable to have a Gracie fight team. Doesn't mean they're top, but they're the ones who started this MMA stuff. Southpaw. She's Southpaw like the Diaz brothers, right? She can switch it up and change stances on you. So, that might play into her favor and throw a different look. Something that Yana Santos hasn't really seen before. And she only has 3 fights in the UFC to her name. So she's still fairly young, not fairly young, still fairly new, still fairly fresh to the UFC scene. In her UFC debut, she won by knockout versus Storolenko, who is a can. Let's just keep it a buck, right? Let's just keep it where it's at. Storolenko is an absolute trash can. So, I mean, okay, cool. She got her a finish in the UFC or in the women's division, right? Which is not really a normal thing. Then she loses to Dumont by unanimous decision, which, okay, respectable. That's a step up in competition. And then she gets fed another trash can in Josiane Nunez, and she wins by unanimous decision, which actually, respect to Chelsea Chandler, because Josiane Nunez, I mean, that fight was earlier this year at March 16, 2024, back on, I believe, was that a numbered card? That might have been a number card here. Let me double check, but I'm not entirely too sure. Oh no, it was a UFC Fight Night. It was the Tybura versus Tuivasa fight card. Where Tybura submitted him, so another Tybura card that Chelsea Chandler's on, which is interesting. I don't know how the matchmaking worked out that way, but I guess it did. But yeah, Josiane Nunez 10-2, and another Southpaw fighter 7-0 by knockout, never been submitted. So I mean, Josiane Nunez, she literally looks like a dude, fights like a dude. It's scary. I don't want to assume, but she might be one of those transgenders with that whole transgender stuff going on in boxing for the Olympics. Absolutely weird. But yeah, Josiane Nunez, very notable resume. She was 3-0 going to that fight. She won her debut by knockout, dominated her next two fights by unanimous decision. So actually respect to Chelsea Chandler, because I would say that fight alone is a big step up in competition than whatever Yana Santos has had to face. And she came out victorious, whereas Yana Santos has fought some cans and struggled. So the only thing that scares me is, like, you have to keep back in your mind, is Yana Santos one of those Russian people, right? Fighting out of Russia, you know, or no, she's not fighting out of Russia, but she is Russian, and she's fighting out of American Top Team. I believe American Top Team is the same team that Sean Strickland is, and Chris Curtis and all of them are from, and where they're at over here in Vegas. So she's actually got a notable team, decent team, respectable team, one of the better teams out there. I'm not going to say it's a top team, no pun intended, right? She's fighting Orthodox. Foxy is her nickname. And I mean, okay, maybe in her last three fights, she's had a better resume than Chelsea Chandler, which is why she struggles so much and is losing. So I take back what I said about Chelsea Chandler having a better victory. I mean, it's not a knock on Josiane Nunez. That's still a really, really good victory. But I mean, if you take a look at Yana Santos, she hasn't fought in over a year. Her last fight was July 1st of last year, where she fought Ketlin Rosa, or excuse me, Karol Rosa, who's also on this card, and Karol Rosa beat her. So yeah, Karol Rosa beat Yana Santos, who are both on the same card, which is weird because Yana Santos is on the main card, and the only reason being is because of probably Chelsea Chandler. Yeah, she lost to Karol Rosa by split decision, which was close. And then that was on a Strickland card as well. I think that was the Strickland Magomedov card. Right, yeah, it was. It was the fight night at the Apex. She got that fight because, being on the same team. And then she lost unanimous decision to an old-ass Holly Holm. Not a good look. Both girls are older, but the fight you probably should take. But again, a notable loss, right? A respectable loss. Then you got knocked out by Irene Aldana, who, again, another notable and respectable loss. Irene Aldana, she's, finding a little bit of rhythm and groove. Another girl that's kind of like up and down, but still a respectable, decent fighter. And she knocks you out. So she's on a 3-fight losing skid. She's in jeopardy of losing this fight, which is probably why I could also see the books favoring her. And that's funny. She has the same birthday as my dad, just 2 years apart, 23 years apart. She's 11/11/89. My dad's 11/11/67. So, yeah, that's something cool to notice about sharing the same dad. So maybe I bet Yana Santos for a birthday bet because she has the same birthday as my dad. I don't know. Don't know what to make of that there, but I'm not gonna let that factor in my decision of betting her. And then she won unanimous decision to Ketlin Vieira, which is actually a very respectable win. That's a good win. That was all the way back in 2021 though. And and then she won unanimously to Storilenko, a trash can, a fighter she should beat, and a fighter she beat by decision. Chelsea Chandler stopped her. So, and then she got knocked out by Aspen Ladd. Not a good look because that was back in 2019. I don't even think Aspen Ladd's on the roster anymore. Get knocked out by a can. Then you won back-to-back decisions, right? To Lena Landsberg, who's a trash can, not on the roster anymore, and Marion Renault, who I believe is still on the roster, barely. If not, she's been cut. So not on the roster no more. And then your UFC debut, you fought for the belt versus Chris Cyborg, which, getting fed to the wolves like that is tough, right? In your UFC debut, in your UFC fight. Oh, okay. So I guess it was supposed to be Cyborg versus Kunitskaya, and Kunitskaya, didn't fight, or she dropped out because whatever happened, a last second exchange or something like that. And in comes Yana Santos on last second notice to save the card. Damn, this was UFC 222 back in 2018. It's crazy how different times have changed in the UFC, constantly evolving and changing. Like Frankie Edgar fighting Brian Ortega on that card, John O'Malley fighting on that card, Andrei Sukumath, Andrei Arlovsky when he was somewhat in his primer days, Ketlin Bieta on that card, Kenzie Dern fighting Ashley O'Dare, who's not even fighting anymore, Beneil Dariush. So, I mean, a decent card. Cody Stamen. Wow. What a flashback to the past. But yeah, Chris Cyborg was the main event on that card despite all of those names. And she absolutely sparked Yana Santos. It's crazy that Chris Cyborg got dropped in the UFC because, I mean, she was a UFC GOAT, UFC legend. And she fights in 145, which I don't think is a division anymore in the UFC. I think they completely dropped or cut the UFC featherweight division 145. And yeah, she's 27-2. Only lost. I mean, she's dominated the Bellator scene, right? Multiple Bellator championships. She was a champ in the UFC. She defended her, belt multiple times in the Bellator. I mean, you could argue outside of Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg is the women's MMA GOAT. I mean, Amanda Nunes knocked her out. That's probably the only notable loss. And then her UFC debut back in 2005, she got submitted with a knee bar. So every single one of her fights, 21-1 by knockout. She has heavy hands. I mean, Cyborg is dangerous. So weird to see her get dropped from the UFC like that, still in her prime. And I think she could possibly spark up a lot of these girls, in the UFC still to this day. I would like to see Chris Cyborg. I don't even know who you could fight. I think maybe she got dropped because she's featherweight 145. It was probably hard for her to make 135 weight struggle. I mean, Amanda Nunes was struggling with 135 weight struggle too. Cutting that weight, they're getting susceptible to knockouts, a lot of implications, a lot of issues, a lot of problems. So that's probably why. Other than that, I couldn't think of a reason why Cyborg got dropped. But yeah, Yana Santos jumped in last second on her UFC debut and just gets destroyed. So, I mean, the trash can she was supposed to beat, she's beat. And the people that were expected to beat her, took care of her. So it's like an even 50-50 wash. And she was a proactive fighter. I mean, if you go all the way back from her UFC debut, she fought twice in 2018, about 5 months apart. And then 2019, she fought twice, about 5 months apart. Fought once in 2020, and that was it. Fought twice in 2021. Didn't fight at all in 2022. Took a huge year-long layoff and layover, which definitely would hurt her because, when you take those long layovers, everyone's only getting better, whereas you're just standing on the sideline and watching, especially when you're thrown to the fire against Holly Holm and Karol Rosa in your comeback fights after a year being gone. Not good. So that probably hurts her and a reason why, she was not successful. And I just don't see, with Yana Santos struggling, MMA career not panning out the way she wanted it to, not as successful, not as victorious, and not getting any notoriety or being a notorious fighter. 7-3 by knockout, 1-2 by sub. She's been finished 5 out of her 8 losses. That's unheard of in women's MMA. Majority of your fights you lose by decision. And I don't think there's a pathway of victory for her to dominate Chelsea Chandler. I mean, she easily could dominate her just because she has the fight experience and the fight resume to apply it to a girl that like Chelsea Chandler that's inexperienced, right? And she has the better team. Whereas Chelsea Chandler is just a little bit younger, right? Both girls are landing similar amount of significant strikes. So nothing to write home about. Both landing about 3.5 to 4 strikes. Yana Santos is definitely landing with 71% volume, which is insane, to only Chelsea Chandler's 60% or 57%. That's a huge drastic difference. They're about even on the average takedowns and even on the accuracy. I think Yana Santos looks for the submission more than Chelsea Chandler does. I mean, both girls are complete, well-rounded fighters. They're about even in my opinion, which warrants the price. They're leaning a little heavily, not heavily, but leaning a little more to the Yana Santos side, which is a little alarming, a little scary. That tells me, like, you know, the books know something we don't, right? Sometimes, because in a fights that are truly 50-50 pick 'em and you're leaning towards one way a little bit, that tells me there's something going on there. But sometimes the books are wrong. They're completely wrong, right? So this isn't going to be an official pick, but I would lean dog or pass here. I like the dog side in Chelsea Chandler. You know, fresher girl, Yana Santos. I mean, she's been there, done that, but she's been finished. And who knows? I mean, who says Chelsea Chandler can't absolutely knock out Yana Santos? I mean, Yana Santos is the more accurate striker, but she's not the heavier hand striker. I think Chelsea Chandler is the heavier hand striker. Um, but both girls have even knockout odds. Chelsea Chandler is more live for the submission, right? So there's that. I mean, their books are implicating, despite Yana Santos being the favored side, there's more pathways of victory ITD wise for Chelsea Chandler based on the odds. So I think this fight does go the distance. I don't think either girl can put each other away. I don't think Yana Santos is going to let Chelsea Chandler knock her out. I think she is going to try and keep her distance, have some control, fight some hands, be very defensive, right? Very sharp. And, with the American top team, you're fighting and learning from people like Sean Strickland, who walk you down with that marching band style, stomping their feet and exhausting you moving forward and, putting pressure on you. Chris Curtis kind of does the same thing. Chris Curtis has good ground game too. So maybe Yana Santos comes out with a game plan early on that frustrates Chelsea Chandler and beats her up through experience, like just lays on her. But Yana Santos is just not as strong on the ground as Chelsea Chandler. So I don't think she can easily frustrate Chelsea Chandler like she wants to or expects to. So yeah, I'm going to lean Chelsea Chandler, and that's going to be my unofficial pick. Also, the odds implicate that they like them to go the distance, over 2.5 rounds, heavily favored. The fight to go to distance, minus 300. So, I mean, plus 240 for Chelsea Chandler to win by a decision is absolutely a good sprinkle. That'd probably be a long shot parlay piece, but yeah, we'll lean dog or pass here as my unofficial pick. All right, next fight on the card, we got Chris Gutierrez fighting Quang Lee. Now, this fight was made on last second notice, last second, fight making or decision making. I believe another one of the fights on the card. Oh yeah, Youssef Zalal's fight was made on last second decision making. Youssef Zalal was supposed to fight somebody else. I'm not sure who. And Jarno Errens stepped in on last second notice, so that's another reason that favors Youssef Zalal if you want to go back and look at that fight. But yeah, this fight was made last second notice because I didn't see this fight on the card anywhere at all before, and it just popped up and came up out of nowhere. Probably made like 2-3 days ago. We got Chris Gutierrez minus 600 versus Quang Lee as a plus 400 dog. And this one's very intriguing. So Quang Lee is making his UFC debut. He's 8-0, right? Fighting out of the academy in Minnesota. I believe that's the same fight team that Kimbo Slice's son coaches and trains and teaches out of. If I'm not mistaken, I would have to double check. And I'm going to look that up real quick just to fact check myself. I know he fights and trains in Minnesota. I don't know if his name is Evan Ferguson Jr. Is this his son? Kimbo Slice Jr., Baby Slice, 3-3. Maybe this is Kimbo Slice's son, Baby Slice, 3-3. Yeah. No. Kimbo Slice's son was fighting in Bellator. I don't think he fights anymore. Then he signed a deal with Celebrity Boxing. Trying to make it work, make it happen, but in 3. Maybe if I look up where does now that I know his name. Ferguson. I'm pretty sure he trains out of Minnesota. I don't know if that's that same team in Academy, Minnesota. I think it might be though. So it's not a bad gym. It's not a notable, recognizable gym, but I know he started out in Miami because that's where Kimbo Slice is from and all that. Family's all that from there in Florida. But he transferred over to Minnesota, where he's at now. Minnesota MMA gym. Let's see. Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Yeah, I think this is him. And what's his name? There's also a YouTuber who's a big MMA fan. Not Luffy or something like that. Lofi. He's like a troll YouTuber who does like skits or not skits, but like pranks. The monotone voice guy. He's like Asian looking. He actually visited and sparred at the academy in Minnesota and met, what's it called? Kimbo Slice's son and trained with him. Yeah, the number one MMA gym in Minnesota, amateurs to pro world champions. The Academy, Minnesota. This actually might be the team. Let's see. There's Quang Lee on the front page. Yeah, that's Kimbo Slice's son right there on the far left. Rose fought from here. Has been there. Rose hasn't fought there anymore or in a long time. But she's from there. Was there in Minnesota for a while because I think she is from Minnesota. And then she moved to Denver with Pat Barry where she now. Yeah, definitely a notable, respectable team. They're not bad at all. Got good IQ, good game plan. Oh, Greg Nelson trains there. Greg Nelson's a very notable, respectable guy. He's very high IQ. Rose Namajunas posted on her Instagram one heck of a week training from this guy. I can't believe Rose has 2.3 million followers. That's crazy. I guess that knockout on Zhang Wei Li gave her overnight success. So yeah, Quang Lee making his UFC debut at 32 years old, but hey, it must be a respectable debut to make happen because you just don't get your UFC debut shot out of nowhere for no reason. If Dana White and company doesn't like you or don't see something in you, they definitely must saw a big draw with Quang Lee. Now this is not even probably, this will probably most likely will be the best fighter he's ever fought in his career. And it sucks that in his debut, they're feeding him to the wolves against a guy like Chris Gutierrez. But to be fair, this fight was made last second. They hit up Quang Lee. They gave him the call. They say, hey, we know what you got in your tool bag, your toolkit. Let's show it on display here in the UFC. Let's make it happen. I mean, you can't knock and destroy a guy. I mean, if he puts on a good fight and makes Chris Gutierrez work for it and they go the distance and he doesn't get finished ITD or finishes a guy like Chris Gutierrez ITD, bro, he's going to be a fan favorite for a while. He's definitely going to get a contract. And if he loses but puts on a good fight despite losing, he'll probably warrant a good contract because, like I said, you don't get a makeshift last-second call on your UFC debut if you weren't a notable, good enough fighter. So I feel like Quang Lee, high IQ, very, very good technical fighter. And he's fought in LFA. LFA is like the farm league for UFC. It's one of the more prominent, notable regional scenes or smaller fight companies. It's literally like the stepping stone step into the UFC. LFA is probably up there in terms of promotion and company like competition in the company. It's probably up there with Bellator and PFL. I would think so. I would assume so. But yeah, he fought in LFA 7 of his 8 fights, and then he fought 1 fight in Ignite fights. And all of his fights, he's won by finish, except 3 of them. He was victorious by decision. So his MMA debut was back in 2021. So, I mean, he's still fairly new, fairly young, only 32 years old, right? But he's only been fighting, for 3 years. So he's been fighting since 29, and he's been really, really good. So, yeah, he won by unanimous decision in his first fight. And he won by back-to-back submissions, rear naked choke, neck crank, unanimous decision again. He won late in the 3rd round, like right before it went to decision. He won with like 16 seconds left. He won by submission, rear naked choke. Then the split decision, he eked out a scary one. And then back-to-back, his last 2 fights, he won by knockout. And he's already fought twice this year in the LFA. He fought in January, turned around 3 months later, and knocked out another guy. So not only is he being proactive and staying young, fresh, polished, it seems like this guy really wants it. He's really hungry. He knows what he can do. And already fighting twice in the same calendar year, that early on, that quick of a turnaround is absolutely nuts, absolutely crazy, let alone, he knocked out both guys. So, hey, this Quang Lee guy poses a threat and poses a problem. And I heard a lot of handicappers that are in the MMA space and business all over Twitter saying that they've made really good money betting Quang Lee. And some of his fights, you could probably get him at a dog price, and he came through. I mean, 8-0 flawless, completely. I mean, I bet you if you probably bet $100 on Quang Lee all 8 of his fights and rolled it over your winnings again and again, you probably made close to 10 to 20 racks off of Quang Lee in the LFA. I don't know what sports books offer it. I know FanDuel, DraftKings, they don't offer LFA. You probably have to get like an offshore book or maybe like a Bet365. Because Bet365 is one of those books that offer anything and everything. It's absolutely insane and crazy the stuff that you can bet on there. You can bet like, I don't even know, but like New Zealand, like American football on there. It's nuts. Yeah, and then Chris Gutierrez, I mean, 3-2 in his last 5. But I mean, 26-2 overall. So 2 of his fights, they were draw or no contest. I believe one of them was a no contest, if I'm not mistaken. No, they're actually both draws. So in his regional scene when he was coming up, right, he drew with Brandon Saylor back in Extreme Knockout. It was a majority draw. That was a majority decision. And then he drew with Cody Durden back in COVID in 2020, which is a respectable draw. I mean, Cody Durden's a respectable fighter, notable fighter. So you can't knock it or shake it on that one. The only thing going for Chris Gutierrez here is by far the fighting experience. He's only 1 more year older than Quang Lee, and he's been doing this for a while now, and he's been there, done that, has a fighting resume, has a fighting experience. So despite being 1 year older, he's been with the UFC company and corporation a lot longer. And I mean, 28 fights compared to 8, that's a whole 20 year, that's a whole 20 fight difference. That's basically like a 10-year difference in a short amount of time, and you guys are only 1 year in 1 year in age differential. So definitely the fighting experience and resume goes Chris Gutierrez's way. Chris Gutierrez has been fighting since 2013. So he's been doing this for 11 years now, compared to, Quang Lee, who's only been doing this for 3 years, and Quang Lee hasn't done it at the top level yet at all, So there's that. And where is he at? He didn't make his UFC debut until back in 2018. So around the same time, roughly around the same time when Quang Lee was just barely getting started in MMA and fighting, Chris Gutierrez was making his UFC debut. He lost the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale to Raoni Barcelos by sub. And then he found his rhythm and went on a 7-fight win streak. One of those, it would have been 8, but he drew with Cody Durden, right? So then that's where he found his recent struggles. He lost to Pedro Munoz. He won by decision to Alencar. I'm not even pronouncing the name at all, but he won by unanimous decision there. And then just lost to Sung Yadong by decision. So he's only been finished once. He's 10-1 by finish, 1-1 by sub, 9-0 by knockout. So 10 of his 20 victories have been by finish. And then 5 of his 6 losses have been by way of decision. So he puts on good scraps and then he draws. So Chris Gutierrez is definitely a respectable, notable fighter in the 135 bantamweight division. We don't know what to expect with Quang Lee because we haven't seen him on the big time scene in the big company just yet. And Chris Gutierrez is fighting out of a respectable, notable team. He's fighting out of Factory X, another fighter out of Factory X Muay Thai down there in Colorado. So he's definitely got the gas tank mixed with the experience that all around favors him. And he's never been knocked out, so I don't think Quang Lee is going to be the first. If Quang Lee does knock him out, that would be absolutely crazy. We might have a problem on our hands with Quang Lee making some noise. Quang Lee, he might be pathway to victory is by sub, maybe, because I know Chris Gutierrez isn't that well-rounded and not all that on the ground game, despite being from Factory X, which that's one of their focal points is wrestling. So, I mean, Chris Gutierrez probably wins on the striking, wins on the experience, wins on the gas tank. But I will say this, though. I will say I don't have an official pick on this card. This is going to be dog or pass for me. I just can't get behind laying the minus 600 price. And the only reason it's that way is because all the different reasons I mentioned to you. Also, this fight being made on a last second notice makeshift, right? And Quang Lee having no experience here at all. It's not a knock to Quang Lee, it's just we don't know. I mean, maybe he's ready for this moment, maybe he's ready for this big step up. But your chances of winning your UFC debut is like slim to none. It's probably like 20-30%, maybe even less than that. So I just can't get behind the minus 600 price because with a guy like Chris Gutierrez, you don't know what to expect from him either. Because in fights that he should be dominant, he kind of like regresses backwards and shies away from the moment and, shies away from seizing the moment and taking it all away. So I don't like that about him. And by the way, his nickname's El Guapo, which is funny. Not even a handsome dude at all. So don't know who gave him that shit or that name. I'd have to see your wife first if you're married, girlfriend or whatever. If you're allowed to have that nickname. But yeah, only 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and you lose to a guy like Song Yadong by decision, which is not a good look. And then you lose to Pedro Munoz, which, I mean, both are step-up fighters, or like big-name fighters in your division, but it's not a good look when you're losing to them when you should be winning. I mean, you knocked out Frankie Edgar. That's Frankie Edgar on his way out, basically out of the UFC. And you beat a whole bunch of trash cans who aren't even with the company anymore. So it's like, and then you had a stint where you could have gotten to the UFC but didn't. And your regional scene's not the greatest. You were in the LFA for a couple of fights, 2 fights. You knocked out Jimmy Flick, who is not even anything, right? Then you beat this guy, you struggle with this guy, Timur Valiev. You beat him by split the first time, then you lose by unanimous the next time. Bellator, you were in the Bellator scene early on when Bellator was coming up. You won by knockout. So it's just hard to pick a side here, and I don't want to be laying minus 600 juice in a parlay, and then a live dog comes around like Quang Lee and busts my bubble, busts my parlay. If I were to take Chris Gutierrez, I don't think either side's finishing each other. With the way Quang Lee has, he has some finishes under his belt, but he can go the distance, which means he has the chin to survive. He has the fighting IQ to survive. Chris Gutierrez doesn't really have the knockout power, despite being 9-0 by knockout, because a lot of the knockouts he has is to trash cans that really may not have the greatest chins. And I think Quang Lee is probably one of the better chins Chris Gutierrez is going to face. And I don't think Chris Gutierrez is going to have an effect on Quang Lee on the ground. I think Quang Lee might have him beat low-key on the ground, in my opinion. Despite Quang Lee, not having any proactive, he's won more fights by sub than he has by knockout. 3-0 by sub, 2-0 by knockout. So I would say Quang Lee's way better on the ground than Chris Gutierrez. So yeah, laying minus 600 with the guy who we don't know, who's been struggling recently, up and down like a roller coaster, versus a guy who's a hungry wolf coming in his UFC debut, who's actually one of the better fighters. And the other thing that's going for, which is weird, because Chris Gutierrez is 5'9", Quang Lee is 5'6", 3-inch height advantage, so that favors Chris Gutierrez in the striking department. But not so fast. That height differential is negated by Quang Lee's reach advantage, who has the 3-inch reach advantage, 70-inch reach advantage to Chris Gutierrez, 67 reach advantage. But he has little itty-bitty T-Rex arms that can't get out there and do anything. So I don't think Chris Gutierrez is going to knock out Quang Lee unless he absolutely loads up a punch that Quang Lee doesn't see and catches him off guard, which I doubt Quang Lee is going to let happen. But I think Quang Lee has a respectable chin. So I'm going to lean dog or pass here. I think Quang Lee is a live dog, plus 400 money line. I can't get behind him laying a chalked minus 600 juice price in Chris Gutierrez. Despite, even though the odds maker think Chris Gutierrez is going to knock out Quang Lee, that's his favorited pathway to victory. I think Quang Lee has more pathways to victory. I think he's better on the ground. Can match him in striking with the negating him with the length. I think Chris Gutierrez may have heavier hands, but heavier hands met with a good chin, that kind of negates each other. So if this does go the distance, plus 700 sprinkle for Quang Lee. And minus 125 by decision for Chris Gutierrez. if he wins, unless he absolutely dominates Quang Lee and has a phenomenal game plan that he executes, then yeah, I don't see it for Chris Gutierrez. They like the fight to go the distance based on the odds, and they like the fight, over 2.5 rounds. They like Quang Lee to survive in there, which is weird to have low knockout odds despite the books all around liking the decision factor in there. Yeah, Quang Lee by decision plus 700. That'd be a crazy hit to see. But yeah, not going to make an official play on my card, and we move on to the next fight. Coming into the home stretch here, we got our last 3 fights on the card. Here we got Danny Barlow taking on Nikolay Veretennikov. I probably butchered that horribly, but yeah, straight to the point. I like Danny Barlow here. I don't like the price tag that he's at now. Literally last night when I looked at this fight, he was literally minus 300. I think like minus 290. And he shot up to minus 400 now. So to get shot up a whole dollar and some change overnight is absolutely drastic and absolutely scary and crazy. I don't like that because, I mean, this Nikolay guy is no slouch either. He's not entirely too bad. I just think, Danny Barlow has heavier hands, more polished striking, even though he's not landing as accurate as Nikolay. And, Danny Barlow, he's throwing with more volume, throwing with more flurries in exchanges. And I don't think Nikolay's chin can hold up because I think Nikolay has been knocked out once in his career, despite being 9-1 by knockout. 1-1 by sub, so he has been finished twice before. He's 10-2 by finish, and then his other 4 fights. Other 4 fights he's 2-2 by decision. So, I mean, he is finishing or getting finished more often than he is going the distance, and this is a step up for Nikolay. He's never been in the UFC. This is another fighter on his UFC debut, so this is why it's warranting that heavy chalk juice price. And Nikolay tried to get in the UFC before, but he lost by unanimous decision in the Dana White Contender Series to Michael Morales. And just look at the way Michael Morales has turned out. Michael Morales is one of my favorite fighters on the roster, on the card. He's been turning into an absolute animal, an absolute beast. And his nickname is literally Spider-Man. Because, you have Michael Morales, and then you have Miles Morales, who is one of the Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse. So, and out of Ecuador, and he kind of fights like a spider monkey, so that kind of warrants a nickname as well. Yeah, a lengthy dude who is a problem and is absolutely scary in the welterweight 170 division. 16-0, 11-0 by knockout, 1-0 by sub. This guy has definitely got title contention written all over his name in the welterweight division. He's future in the division. A lot of these fighters, though, he has a lot of work to do, but I think he can beat a lot of these top-ranked fighters. Vicente Luque, he'd give him a run for his money, probably beat Vicente Luque. But yeah, he's flawless right now. He has 4 fights in the UFC. He hasn't fought in almost over a year, so I would expect him to fight soon. But yeah, 16-0, 11-0 by knockout, 1-0 by sub. One of my favorite fighters to watch right now. Definitely in my top 10 favorite fighters at the moment. I absolutely love Michael Morales. So, that's not a knock on our guy Nikolay here. He got fed to the wolves and happened to run into an absolute animal in the Dana White Contender Series, and he went the distance with them. He lost by unanimous decision, but Michael Morales absolutely destroyed him, and Michael Morales couldn't put him away, with especially a guy that has heavy hands. So I think Michael Morales probably has better striking than Danny Barlow, and I would argue him and Danny Barlow have similar hand or striking power. I'd give the slight leaning edge to Danny Barlow, but it's really, really close. I think Michael Morales isn't too far with drop off and having heavy hands, but we'll see. And for Michael Morales not being able to put away, a guy has 12 of his 16 victories are by finish, 11 by knockout, and he had a hard time struggling putting away and finishing Nikolay. That's something to take note in and respect. And then, since he lost the Dana White Contender Series, he went back to the regional scene and went back to the UFL, not the Football League UFL, okay? The UFL Fighting League, United Fight League. And he found his rhythm again, found a little bit of his groove. He fought twice in 2023, but since that 2021 loss to Michael Morales in the Dana White Contender Series, he took a year-long layover, a year off, and it kind of helped him for the better because, again, like I said, he found his rhythm, found his groove. He won by sub. and then back-to-back knockouts. So last 3 victories, all by way of finish for our guy Nikolay here. And then before the Dana White Contender Series, he was in and out of the Russian scene, and he was in LFA. He was in Fury. I think Fury is Russian, if I'm not mistaken. And then, yeah, Russian MMA, M1 Global, I know is Russian. So, I mean, he's fought in some notable companies. I mean, he won his debut in MMA by knockout in the first round. It took 1 punch. Literally, I think it says literally 1 punch before the clock even started, and that was in Kazakhstan. And then after that, he took a step up in fighting and went on a 3-fight losing streak and a little skid there, and was 1-3 back in 2014. He fought 3 times, lost all 3 times. Then he took another year layoff, didn't fight for a whole year, comes back in 2016, finds a good lengthy rhythm and groove again. But yeah, he fought in 2012 and didn't fight again from 2014. So this guy is notable for taking long layovers when things don't go his way and he loses and gets frustrated. It's like when he loses, he's mental checks out, it seems like, and he doesn't fight for a long time until he bounces back and finds his rhythm and groove again. And then when he wins, he's like, damn, I'm winning. I'm proactive. Let's keep it going. Let's get it going. Because like I said, didn't fight for a whole year, comes back in 2014, struggled through 2014, 0-3 that year, takes a year off, comes back and goes on a, 8-fight win streak. In all 8 of those fights, he won 6 of those 8 by knockout. He fought 3 times in 2016, 2 times in 2017, didn't fight for a year, comes back in 2019, didn't fight for a year in COVID, comes back in 2021, fights 3 times, and then didn't fight in 2022, and then fights twice in 2023. So when this guy's in it, he's in it to win it. He's proactive, constantly fighting, and then when he's losing, he just checks out and not there. I don't really like that with the guy who's, a mental drama queen, because you got to stay even kill in the fight game no matter what if things aren't going your way. He's fighting out of King's MMA, not a notable team. He is a Kazakhstan fighter. Kazakhstan is slowly coming up onto the scene. I mean, there's not really major big-name Kazakhstan fighters. There's a couple. I mean, this is not a knock to Shavkat Rakhmonov. I obviously know who Shavkat Rakhmonov is. I know people are going to misquote me or misclip what I just said and saying there's not notable Kazakhstan fighters. And they're going to say, excuse me, and then they're going to turn into some TikTok edit and a highlight reel for Shavkat. Yes, guys, I know Shavkat Rakhmonov, don't take it out of context. But we see a lot more respectable guys coming out of the Kazakhstan scene, trying to make a name for themselves and make it work and make it happen. But so far, Shavkat has been the one to make a name for himself. But yeah, Danny Barlow, 8-0 in his career. He's flawless so far. Again, he's fighting a guy who has not been on the UFC scene. Danny Barlow has the experience and factor over Nikolay, but not much experience over Nikolay. I mean, he only has 1 official UFC fight to his name, 2 technically if you want to count Dana White Contender Series, right? But yeah, he beat Josh Quinlan, which is an insane win. That was back in February of this year. That was on the Volkanovski Topuria card. I actually remember that fight, and it was crazy to see Josh Quinlan get knocked out like that, because Josh Quinlan, he has heavy hands and heavy striking like that, and he doesn't get finished or put away like that at all. 6-3 in his UFC career, and all 6 of his victories are by finish. 4-1 by knockout, and 2-0 by sub, and then 2 losses by decision. But I mean, Josh Quinlan's on a 3-fight losing streak, 2 by decision, and that Danny Barlow knockout, and he's already fought twice this year. Quinlan lost Adam Fugit back in June of this year, literally a couple months ago. So not a good look for Josh Quinlan, who's on a fighting skid, fighting struggle. But yeah, to see him absolutely getting stark and sparked like that, it just shows you what kind of heavy hands this dude Danny Barlow has. Well, I mean, and Josh Quinlan was making the fight. He was staying in it. It almost went the distance, right? And then Danny Barlow took him out and put him away earlier in the 3rd round. And you could see it late in the 2nd round. He was piecing him up. But they were both exchanging. They were both throwing. And it was a respectable scrap. And so it just sometimes you get got, right? So, I mean, a guy like Josh Quinlan is a more notable, respective, UFC resume under your belt, under your record. And then he beats Ryan Forrest in the Dana White Contender Series. And Raheem Forrest is somewhat of a notable win. 7-2, 4-1 by knockout, 1-1 by sub. This dude looks like an absolute tank and beast out of Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. His nickname is Ram. He sparks a young guy, a 27-year-old. So he knocked him out literally in the first round. So it's like Danny Barlow, he's a threat. He's dangerous. And in his 8 victories, 5 or 6 of them are by finish, 5 by knockout, 1 by sub. I doubt this fight goes the distance because, I mean, look at this. Danny Barlow has 2 fights in his resume that have gone the distance, right? And then Nikolay has a couple fights that have gone the distance, but majority of his had by finish. I would be shocked if the odds makers and the sports books favor this fight to go the distance. I don't think this fight goes the distance at all. I don't even think it goes 2.5 rounds. I think the early finish. Either side's gonna get an early finish here in either rounds 1 or 2. Maybe you get screwed if you do under 2.5 rounds because Danny Barlow can get that late 3rd round finish, that last round finish. But I like Danny Barlow by knockout, either rounds 2 or 3. And also his nickname is Left-Handed God. You just have to bank and bet on a guy with that kind of nickname. I mean, Left-Handed God is a crazy dope nickname. I absolutely love it. Maybe Danny Barlow can become one of my favorite fighters to watch and see. But yeah, Left-Handed God is an absolute dope nickname. That's pretty sick. And yeah, that left hand, like Alex Pereira, can spark somebody and clip somebody and knock him out. I mean, 5 of his 8 victories by knockout. So, I mean, he's backing up his talk. He's backing up his nickname. And Nikolay, his chin, I mean, he's only been knocked out once. But, I mean, he's coming from a regional scene where there's not really heavy hitters, heavy hands. So he hasn't had to worry about being, pressed or knocked out. So, yeah, I like Danny Barlow by 2nd round knockout. I would take rounds 2 or 3, Danny Barlow. So you're basically hoping that Nikolay survives the first round here, which is kind of scary. Maybe you get, I don't know. I want to lean round 2 or 3 later. I'm going to give, Nikolay the benefit of the doubt here and hoping that he can survive. But if it becomes too much in a high flurry, high volume that Danny Barlow throws, it can be an early quick fight and get out of the way. Especially a guy that's not experienced like Nikolay here. I mean, he's barely making his UFC debut. He doesn't know what to expect. His team knows the game plan. They respect Danny Barlow's hands. They might try to go with a takedown game plan, but that's not Nikolay's strong suit at all. I think it's going to be on the feet. And if it is on the feet, Danny Barlow is going to spark this guy and put him away. I want to do rounds 2 or 3. Rounds 1 and 2 isn't bad. You're basically banking on Barlow to get it done in rounds 2. You want to straight bet that. Round 2 knockout would be my pick. I'm curious what the odds makers have. Yeah, they like this under 2.5 rounds, minus 155. So we're aligned there, and they do not like the fight to go the distance. I'd be shocked if it does. And the pathway to victory is pretty clear. Danny Barlow by knockout is plus 100 or decision. If you want to play it safe, you can probably get better value on a decision or knockout prop for Danny Barlow. And if you don't want to lay minus 400, I'm pretty safe. That's going to be my official pick. It's going to make my official card. I'm confident in Danny Barlow a lot. I really like it a lot. It'll be my official pick on the card here. So Danny Barlow, safe play, would be by knockout or decision. And if I were to lean a straight prop, it'd be by knockout and probably in the 2nd round. So we're just banking on Danny Barlow. Please don't knock him out early in the first round, and Nikolay just survive the first round and just get knocked out the next round. That'd be a crazy hit if we can exactly call the exact shot of the round and by what way and by what finish. Let me look at the odds real quick, because when you actually look at these exact outcomes, you can get good odds here. Let me see here. Danny Barlow. I like... Yeah, Danny Barlow to win by rounds 1 or 2. Knockout is plus 175, and then rounds 2 or 3 is plus 290. So, I mean, you can get better prop value, plus money value on the money if, if you get him to survive the 2nd round. I mean, you can place it on both, right? And you'll be profitable if he wins by knockout in the 2nd round. If you do straight up 2nd round knockout, rounds 1 or 2 double chance, like combo, and then 2 or 3 combo, you hit all 3 on the dot if you get rounds 2. So, I mean, let's see here. Danny Barlow by 2nd round knockout is plus 500. His favorite prop is round 1 plus 380. So, I mean, hey, you got plus 500 here, plus 175 and plus 290. You hit on all 3 of those, hey, you're up for the day. So, yeah, Danny Barlow is going to be my official pick here. And we move on to the next fights on the card. Next up on the fight, we got Damon Jackson versus Chepe Mariscal, right? Now, I've been watching some interviews with Damon Jackson. He's a cool dude, respectable fighter, high IQ. He has the resume, has the experience over Chepe Mariscal. But I'm not worried about any of that. None of that matters to me because I've seen Damon Jackson live in action. And despite what his record and resume says, I'm not really too high on Damon Jackson at all. I don't really think that he's that good. I mean, he's a good technical fighter, right? He's very polished. But this is clear cut and obvious to me. This is going to be my official pick straight off the bat, right off the bat. And it's going to be my official play. It's going to make my official card. I think Chepe Mariscal absolutely rips Damon Jackson's head off clean. Now, I don't think Damon Jackson has the greatest chin at all. I don't even think he has a good chin at all. He's been sparked multiple times before, knocked out clean, like absolutely dropped. And when this dude Damon Jackson gets knocked out, this dude has no chin. He just folds like a folding chair. 36 years old, right? Chin's already been knocked out and tested. You're in your late 30s, right? And that's when your chin starts to leave you and goes, and it's already has. And you're fighting a guy with heavy hands who throws in high volume. And not only throwing in high volume, he throws in high volume exchanges that are accurate. He's landing very accurately. And that's just like a recipe for disaster and a recipe for success for Chepe Mariscal. So this matchmaking plays into his hands. This is probably the best fighter that Chepe Mariscal has fought. In my opinion, this is definitely a step up in competition in terms of resume-wise. But yeah, Chepe Mariscal, as long as this doesn't go to the ground, which I'm not even worried about him going to the ground with Damon Jackson, I think he can hold his own and survive. If this stays up on the feet, this fight won't last long. And it'll probably end in first round, if not definitely second round. I mean, just go look at Damon Jackson's knockout, or when he gets knocked out. Dude, this guy literally squatted to his knees and just fell over himself like this and just like almost fell over and got smushed like a sandwich. And then there was another one where his head got blown off like a shotgun and was just like out cold on his back. And it's just like, when he gets knocked out, it's very, very scary knockouts. I mean, he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights, so he's been successful. When he fights very technical and his chin can hang on and survive, and he uses the ground game to his leverage to survive through round by round and get to the decision and to the distance, he does win. I mean, he's coming off a close split decision over Alexander Hernandez, which is actually a okay win. Nothing to write home about. Alexander Hernandez, a guy fighting out of Factory X. And Damon Jackson's fighting out of Fortis MMA. Not a very notable or recognizable team at all. Also, his nickname is the Leech, which I don't like because he's a fraud. He's not the real Leech. The real Leech is Yi Yangling. That's the real Leech, the Chinaman. And this guy is no Leech at all. So I don't like him for that reason. I just don't like the way he looks either in his profile picture. He just looks like a smug-looking dude that you just want to smack in the face. And he just looks like a dude that doesn't have any chin at all, which you'd be right if you just base him off of his profile picture and say this guy has no chin, because it's true. He's 4-4 by knockout, and one of those knockout losses is coming last year, and it's to Dan Ige. Now, you kind of want to give Damon Jackson the benefit of the doubt because, I mean, the guys he's beat are some respectable guys, and majority of them though are some cans that aren't with the company anymore, and the losses that he's had are some expected losses or guys that are just hungry young guys, and he just got fed to the wolves, up and coming stars. And his just way past his prime and way past his time. He's just hanging around the company and lingering around because, I mean, he's successful, he's winning, got a good resume, and, he's a veteran. The company likes him. He's a respectable guy. I heard outside the company from the interviews that I watched and heard from him that if you do right by the company, show up on time, make your weight, you're nice to all the people engaging, and you're not a dickhead around, the company will love you forever and they'll take care of you. They'll get you fights. They'll get you contracts. But he's one of the, outside of the ring, this guy doesn't really have much conflicts. He's just a really nice guy. He's just there to get his paycheck, fight, and that's it. And the company loves him for it. So they're keeping him around, and there's no need to really drop him because he's giving notable fights, I guess. So it's not a knock on him or nothing bad. But yeah, he just fought once earlier this year, close to my birthday. That was back on the Chris Curtis and the Allen card, the rematch between the two of them. Allen got his get back. That was a card right next to my birthday, and that was a fun one to watch. And he beat Alexander Hernandez by split decision. Before that, he lost to Billy Q by unanimous decision. It's a respectable loss. You get knocked out by Dan Ige. That's respectable that you get knocked out by him. And then you get knocked out by Ilya Taporia back in COVID in 2020 when Ilya Taporia was coming up, and that was literally his second fight back in the UFC. Because so the thing with Damon Jackson, he's been fighting since 2012, doing this for 12 years. He was on the regional scene, was in and out of Bellator, was in Legacy Fighting, LFC, got into LFA from there. But back in 2013, from Bellator and LFC, he jumped up to the UFC. And he had a small little stint, small little window with the UFC back from 2014, and it lasted till 2016. So a year and a half, 2 years, and it just didn't go his way. He got submitted in his first fight, and then he had a no contest draw, and then he had a draw again. So, I mean, he's not winning, but he's not losing. So he gets dropped and cut, goes to LFA, goes to the PFL, and he got knocked out in the PFL. And in the LFA, he had great success. He was submitting guys left and right. So definitely a submission artist. His ground game is a strong suit. Definitely not his stand-up game, despite even having 4 knockout wins. But the people he's beat, I mean, Dan Argueta going the distance with Charles Rosa. I mean, okay. Submit, Mirsad Bektik, trash. You submit, Camila Kirk, trash. You knocked out Pat Sabatini. Pat Sabatini's like, whatever. And so the guys he's supposed to beat, he's beating, and the guys he's losing to, he's expected to lose to. And it's just hard to get a read on this Damon Jackson guy too, is because from what I've heard from the betting community around MMA is like they get hosed by this guy a lot, especially in the dog position. He comes through a lot of times as an underdog value. He pulls off these victories somehow out of his ass as long as he doesn't get knocked out. And then you get burned by him if he's a favorite too. So. Like, he's very roller coastery, very hard to gauge, very hard to read and get an understanding on when betting him. And people just struggle with him. I heard this guy, he's made a lot of money on Damon Jackson because he just has good value and good prop odds on him, which is, respectable. But that doesn't scare me off anyways, or doesn't worry me at all with Chepe Mariscal, because in all honesty, outside of Dan Ige and Ilya Taporia, this is probably the best fighter that, Damon Jackson has fought in recent times. And Chepe Mariscal opened at minus 210 favorite. He's moved up 10 cents, and I think he's probably going to move up to close to minus 250 before fight time, which is what I expect. And I don't know if Damon Jackson can survive and go the distance here. It's basically a 50-50 pick'em on the odds, on the prop odds for the fight to go the distance. I mean, it's leaning towards the fight not going the distance, and it's leaning towards a little bit over 2.5 rounds. So I think they're expecting a late 3rd round finish, or barely right after the 2.5 rounds, which I think Chepe Mariscal just puts him out in a way early, which is why I really like Chepe Mariscal by knockout at plus 225 odds. His favorited prop is plus 175. I think he goes the distance and decision and wins unanimously, like clear cut. And Chepe Mariscal dominates him. But with Chepe Mariscal's heavy hands, high volume that he throws with, coming out of Elevation Fight Team, definitely the better team. Machine Gun nickname, got the cooler nickname, not fraudulent. Heavy hands, right? And he's looking really, really good right now and looking like a serious threat. Despite having not as much experience, right? Nowhere near the same experience as Damon Jackson, doesn't have near the fight resume. Still has 22 fights. Right, but only 3 of those 22 fights are in the UFC. He's barely, fairly brand new to the UFC company, 31 years old, and he's 3-0 in the UFC. He's speaking really well, no pun intended, because his UFC debut wins by unanimous decision versus Trevor Peek, and that was an insane fight. If you can go back and watch that fight, wow, what a fight in a scrap by both guys. Like, that was just an insane fight, and he's won unanimously, pieced up Trevor Peek. Then he knocked out. It was technically a TKO with Jack Jenkins, and that's a respectable, notable win on his resume because Jack Jenkins is a top dog right now, and he's fighting next weekend as well, coming up for the Australia UFC 305 card. He's on the prelims. And Jack Jenkins can scrap, dude. That guy is an all-around really, really good fighter. And they posted the highlight of, because they do that when hyping up the fights, they show each fighter's, highlight reels or their fight finishes and whatever. And they showed the Jack Jenkins ones, and Jack Jenkins was in the comment section on UFC's page or UFC MMA and said, "Delete this, please," because the way he won, I guess they were in the clinch, and Chepe Mariscal went to like throw him or swing him to the ground, and when he got to the ground, he landed on his arm weird or his elbow weird, and it like popped out of place. You could like see the bone, like the little ridge. It was like the socket of his elbow came out, and so the judge or the ref called the fight in a technical doctor stoppage or whatever that was by injury or something like that. So it wasn't really like a real victory, but it has to be scored that way, and it is what it is. So that's a notable win. And then Chepe Mariscal worries me because he goes the distance and barely ekes out a split decision win versus Morgan Sharid. And Morgan Sharid is an interesting fighter. I don't know what to make of him. I don't want to call him a full-blown trash can, despite his record showing that he's a trash can. He's coming out of the Cage Warrior scene, another guy who was dominating the Cage Warrior scene, and so far he's been okay and decent. And the UFC, he's 1-1 so far, and it was a decent scrap. So I mean, Morgan Sharid is no slouch. He's still a young fighter, still learning at 28 years old, and he's just learning his way up and his step up. He has a knockout win over a trash can, and then a split decision loss versus a good fighter in Chepe Mariscal. So he's only going to learn and only going to get better. But again, it's a fight that Chepe Mariscal probably should have took care of business there. But yeah, Chepe Mariscal, 2 wins by decision, 1 by knockout. But before the UFC, he was spark plugging everybody. He has 6 wins by knockout. He's been knocked out himself though. He has a respectable regional scene. He went to the Cage Warrior scene. Actually shocking as an American. Went over there to the Cage Warriors. He was in LFA, in and out of LFA regional scene, and he was in Hoosier Fight Club. I believe I'm going to guess in Indiana somewhere out there in the Midwest. Not really respectable, fighting promotion on the regional scene. He actually lost to Bryce Mitchell in the V3 fights in the regional scene. It was a title fight. He lost his belt. It was a belt fight. And then he had a draw afterwards for another belt fight. I think Bryce Mitchell might have gotten the call up. Yeah, I think that's around the time Bryce Mitchell got the call up to the UFC and moved on. Belt was vacated, fought for the belt, and then it was a no contest. He beat Pat Sabatini as well in regionals. He even beat, this is a huge notable win, right? This was the main event on LFA 57, and he fought another guy who's now in the UFC on the same card, on the same promotion. So we probably definitely could see a rematch down the road where Zalal could get his get back. But he beat Youssef Zalal back in LFA back in 2019. So that's a notable win. Gets knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito. That's a respectable loss. You're getting knocked out to Steve Garcia, which is like, okay. I mean, well, Steve Garcia, that's another main event fight. I think Steve Garcia is with the UFC promotion now as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he is. And so Steve Garcia, respectable loss. It's not bad, but it's also like, You know what I mean? It's So in his regional scene, he's lost to some questionable guys. Chepe Mariscal has, but 16-6. 3 of those 6 losses by knockout, 7-3 by knockout, and 3-0 by sub. So he's okay on the ground. Damon Jackson, 15 of his 23 victories are by submission. He's 15-1 on the ground. Chepe Mariscal doesn't have the same levels of ground game as Damon Jackson, so I think he doesn't want to get it there. But if he can get back up to the feet and Damon Jackson tires out from trying to, be on the ground game, he's just going to spark Damon Jackson and knock him out. So I think Damon Jackson can hopefully survive a round, but I think Chepe Mariscal ends it and puts it away in round 2. I think Chepe Mariscal by round 2 knockout is the way to go, and that's the way I lean. All right, and in the words of Bruce Buffer, and now the moment you all been waiting for, the main event of the evening. So the main event of this card is going to be a heavyweight matchup between 2 noticeable, reputable guys in Marcin Tybura and Serghei Spivac, right? So this is going to be an interesting scrap, an interesting fight here. Both guys have fought before, recognizing the Tybura versus Spivac 2 fight. This is definitely a rematch versus both guys here. And I believe Spivac came out victorious the first time around, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, excuse me. Tybura came out victorious. Then that was all the way back in 2020, in the start of COVID. Like, literally right when COVID started, like right after Kobe passed and everything. February 29th, wow, of 2020. And they, Marcin Tybura, they both went the distance. And Tybura won by unanimous decision. This is a very interesting fight. And I'm going to let you know right now, I probably am my official pick. I know it's scary. I kind of wanted to stay away from this main event, but how can you not get on main event action on this card? You know what I mean? So we got, I think I would handicap and price this a little bit differently than the sports books and the odds makers would. They're leaning heavier towards the Spivac side. And I think before fight time, I think a lot of the sharps, if depending on what happens, if Spivac gets driven up to minus 200 price, I don't think it's going to get there because I think a lot of the sharps are coming in late on Tybura, which is not a bad look because these guys, in my opinion, are truly 50-50 in terms of all-around fighting and everything. I mean, both guys are 7-0 by sub, never been submitted, right? They're submitting everybody, and they're not going to submit each other. They already haven't done it in their first fight. So I think they're about even kill, evenly matched on the ground. They can sprawl. I think Serghei Spivac is more finesse on the ground, whereas Tybura is more like your wrestler, strong on the ground. He wants to roll on you. And so I don't see no pathway of victory for either guy to win by sub. That's not the clear cut. They wash each other out there. And, both guys have decent hands. When you're in the heavyweight division, you have to have respectable hands, heavy hands. And in the heavyweight division, you have to have a respectable okay chin, which both guys have a decent chin, despite both being knocked out multiple times. Serghei Spivac 7-3 by knockout. I believe Tybura might be close or the same thing. Maybe Tybura hasn't been knocked out 3 times, maybe a little less. Oh, Tybura has been knocked out more times. Tybura, has 2 more wins by knockout, but been knocked out 2 more times. So that just comes with, the more fight volume, because Serghei Spivac has only fought 20 times compared to Tybura, 33 times. So Tybura definitely has the age. I mean, there's a huge age gap and difference, so that scares me a lot, which why I probably lean towards the Spivac side. I mean, 29-year-old fighter in his prime, learning, only getting better despite his recent struggles, despite getting knocked out twice in his last 5, 3-2 in his last 5. Marcin Tybura coming off of a victory, and he's 3-2 in his last 5 as well. One of those fights being knocked out. So I mean, he's got over 13 more fights in his experience in Serghei Spivac, but he's also 9 years older than him, and he's creeping up to his 40s. And yeah, that's when your chin, starts to leave you. He's part of Onkos MMA, not a highly notable team. Polish fighters are respectable versus, a Moldova fighter. Don't know much about Moldova or Moldovians or what they got going on over there. But Serghei Spivac's coming out of the Polar Bear team, which is, I'm guessing, his own hand-created, hand-picked team, because his nickname is the Polar Bear, which is a dope nickname. I like it. And then Tybura's nickname is just Tybura. It's just his last name without the A, which I don't understand. I get that. Both guys, 6'3", and they're even on the feet, or even on the height, excuse me. And Spivac, despite looking like the smaller guy, I mean, if you look at their profile picture, you'd think Tybura is the heavier guy, but Spivac is actually the heavier guy by 11 pounds, a 10-pound difference, which is a huge differential in the heavyweight division, because when you're that heavy, you may not get clipped because you're fighting a smaller guy. Not saying he's not as strong and can't clip you, because, I mean, Spivac has been clipped multiple times, right? It's just that your senses are there, your chin is probably more there, and you're probably naturally going to be the stronger, heavier hands guy than your opponent. You could probably knock out Tybura, and I mean, Tybura has been knocked out more than you have, so I would expect that, and that's probably where I'm going to lean in this fight when I get to it. But yeah, a Sambo fighting style for Spivac, whereas, Tybura is all around, mixed martial artist, and Tybura is hanging in there. If he wins this one, he's definitely going to stay around for much longer, but if he loses this one, there's just not much going for him. He's not in title contention. He's think close. He's a ranked opponent. If not, he's close or should be. But he's on the lower end of ranked opponents. He might get a couple fights here and there, some paychecks. He's not like a main event draw guy. And I'm surprised. I mean, this fight was made on last second notice, last second decision, because I mean, this main event was made literally like 2 weeks notice or 2 weeks ago. So definitely not a big name draw. He doesn't have the fan base behind him unless somehow locally or in the regional Polish scene is a big deal. So, and once you start creeping to 40, so he's probably got a good 1 to 2 years left in him. But if he gets knocked out here and it changes the trajectory of his career and he starts getting sparked left and right, this is probably it for him, and he's on his way out of the company, and he can become like a coach or something somewhere. Because I mean, he's still a good guy, still a great fighter. 25-8 record is not a bad record to hang your hat on. Maybe he's trying to shoot or aim for 30 wins before he reaches 10 losses, or maybe he somehow gets 7 more fights in him. Well, after this, he would only need 6 before he retires. 6 fights in 2 years is going to be tough when you're reaching your 40s. Maybe he ends his career like 30-10. That's a respectable resume record. Nothing to be mad about or hang your hat on. He had a solid career, you know? So we have same reach advantage, same stance. Even these guys are even kill across the board, which is tough to look at. The only advantage is, you know, Spivac on the ground. And Spivac just has more higher takedown volume. I mean, Tybura has decent takedown volume, but I don't think he's going to be the aggressor here. I think he's going to be actively, you know, looking for the takedown and being the guy on offense to, you know, in the ground game. I think Spivac's going to bring the fight to him on the ground game, but Spivac's got to be careful engaging and entering in. He's got to get in and get out and enter in quick because he can get clipped to Tybura. I mean, he's been knocked out multiple times, and vice versa for Tybura if he goes that route. But the high takedown volume, if you're the younger fighter, you should have the better gas tank. Despite being the heavier guy, you have decent experience despite Tybura having more experience over you. Your takedown accuracy is double what Tybura's got going on, and your submission, you have the submission advantage. I don't think he submits Tybura. I think he can point wrestle, which means, you know, win on control time, win and just lay on him with a heavier body and have more takedowns and be proactive there and then match him on the feet. So, yeah, I think Serghei Spivac as my money line pick on this, you know, main event. Don't doubt, you know, Tybura, though. I mean, they lean plus 600. Spivac by sub is a crazy look, despite Tybura not being submitted. I don't expect him to get submitted here either. I think they just roll around like a bunch of bears. No pun intended. Polar bear is his nickname. And I think Spivac has a hard time trying to get to Tybura's chin. If Tybura submits him, it's going to have to be like by an arm bar or like a leg or something like that. I don't see a guillotine or a rear naked choke, nothing like that going on there. So you can probably just take the submission prop out of the way. I would be really shocked if Spivac gave Tybura his first loss by submission. I really would. This fight to go the distance isn't bad look, but it's also a rough look because if you look at their first matchup, it was only a 3-round fight. It wasn't a 5-round main event fight like it is this time around. So with that being said, I just don't think Marcin Tybura has the gas tank to hang around for 5 fights or 5 rounds, and neither does Tybura. I mean, I don't think Spivac. Oh my god, I'm confusing myself. I don't think Tybura has the gas tank to go 5 rounds, but I think Spivac, if this fight goes longer than 3 rounds, 3.5 rounds, like how they're projecting on the props here, then I think it just the later rounds just favor Spivac because he should have the better, you know, more polished gas tank. But yeah, neither fighter has gone the distance a full 5 rounds, and I'd be shocked if it did. If it did go the distance, it's not out of the realm of possibilities because I mean they did go the distance 3 rounds and they both look like they were conditioned enough, you know, to go maybe a round more, maybe 2. And to be fair, that was back in 2020 with COVID going on, so there's COVID lingering in the back of people's minds. So your conditioning could be held up there, and it held up, you know, and yeah, like I said, they went a full 3 rounds, and it looked like they could have gone even longer. But I mean, that was 4 years ago. A lot can change, and a lot different things happen in 4 years, especially when you're a lot older now and 38. Finding a young, hungry guy who needs to find his way again and get back into the win column. Because Serghei Spivac was looking like a threatening fighter, and he was one of my low-key favorite fighters coming up. Him and the guy that Tom Aspinall just knocked out. Oh my god, I forget even, you know, think of his name. because he just fell off so much, and I thought he was be the next big thing. And I thought he honestly was well, at one point people were saying he was a true competition to beat John Jones and knock him out, and then he fell off. And I thought Serghei Spivac was going to be the guy to be the next reigning title contender or title threat and fight for it. And he just lost his way and was getting finished. But yeah, I mean, Serghei Spivac, if you look at his resume, he has 11 fights in the UFC, I believe. Yeah, 11 fights in the UFC, and he's 7-4 in the company. And 3 of those 4 losses have been by knockout. That's where his 3 knockouts have come by. And 1 by unanimous decision, which is to the rematch against Marcin Tybura. But everyone else, he's finished or won by unanimous majority decision. 2 of his fights, he won by unanimous majority decision. And then he's knocked out 4 people in the company, or 3 people in the company. And he submitted, he has submitted 2 people in the company. And I mean, he submitted Derek Lewis, not a ground game guy at all, right? He submitted Tai Tuivasa, not a ground game guy at all. But he gets knocked out by Walt Harris in his debut. Can't knock him for that. Beats Carlos Felipe, knocks out Jared Vandera. Basically all trash cans that aren't with the company anymore. He goes to this distance with Alexei Olenek, and then he gets knocked out by Tom Aspinall. Knocks out the ultimate trash can in Greg Hardy, so not even a good win. Knocks out Augusto Sakai, whatever. And then gets knocked out by Cyril Gane, which is not a good look on your part. So some big notable fighters that are big names for Serghei Spivac, he's been handled. And trash cans, he's just dominated and handled them. So that's kind of like a wash 50-50 look there. And took care of business. So, and if you look at Marcin Tybura, he's also both of these fighters have been knocked out by Tom Aspinall, which is saying something. So it's like this is the battle of, Tom Aspinall's graveyard basically. And yeah, I mean, you look at Marcin Tybura, he probably has the way better, the greater regional scene. So his resume on the regional scene is a lot more proficient than I would say that of a Serghei Spivac, because Serghei Spivac coming out of Moldova, what the hell is that? Whereas in Russia, you're coming out of M1 Global, M1 Challenge, M1 Combat. That's a very high notable company out there in Russia. They're breeding some demons out there. And in M1 Combat, Marcin Tybura was basically, let's look here. He was 12-0 before he reached his first loss, and it was a TKO doctor stoppage. It was a title defense, and then he won by TKO injury and got his title back. And he had experience there. And let's see, in the UFC, he's been with the UFC company since 2016, so definitely a lot longer than our boy Serghei Spivac here, the polar bear. And he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So he has 19 fights in the UFC promotion compared to Serghei Spivac's 11. That's a big drastic difference there. Pretty alarming. They definitely got the resume there. He's knocked out Greg Hardy, knocked out Walt Harris, a guy that which is weird because both of their resumes are conflicting. So they've both submitted Tai Tuivasa. They have that going there. They both been knocked out by Tom Aspinall, right? He beat Alexander Romanov, which is interesting. Lost to Alexander Volkov. So he has some heavier hitter fighters in the heavyweight division, that some more notable fighters that Serghei Spivac does not have going his way, right? So there's that. And then he knocked out Walt Harris, who went the distance with Serghei. Let's see what else here. But, I mean, Marcin Tybura has been knocked out by Augusto Sakai, who Serghei beat. He got knocked out by Shamil Abdurakhimov. Like, what? Knocked out by Derek Lewis, who Serghei Spivac had a game plan to submit him. So, and then he's beaten some people that he should beat. And then he also lost in his UFC debut versus Tim Johnson, which is like, whoa. You know what I mean? So, yeah, give me the younger, hungrier guy who has more trajectory going for him. Marcin Tybura, still a great fighter, still veteran savvy, still veteran experience. But Serghei Spivac needs this fight more. He wants it more. and needs to pose a threat in the heavyweight division and get back on track and get in the win column. Yeah, give me Serghei Spivac. His knockout is live. I think he puts away Tybura late second or third round. I think both guys can survive the first round. You could sprinkle a safer prop would be double chance, knockout, or decision for Serghei Spivac. I mean, both guys are pretty even on the decision prop here by the pricing. Don't rule out Marcin Tybura by knockout because we've seen Serghei Spivac's chin been exposed. I would just eliminate, the submission. I'd be surprised if this does go the distance, and if it does favor Serghei Spivac the later rounds, in rounds 4 or 5, the championship rounds, just because of the youth and the gas tank just favors him. But yeah, I'll take Serghei Spivac by knockout or decision as a safe prop. I'm gonna lean more towards knockout, and yeah, that's gonna be my final official pick for UFC Fight Night Tybura versus Spivac 2. Now, if you guys want to dive into my official pick cards, so let's just get a little recap of my official pick here. So we got Youssef Zalal by decision, or Youssef Zalal money line, whatever you want to play. Karl Williams money line. We have, and she's not gonna make it. We have Danny Barlow by knockout or Danny Barlow money line. So that's my 3 picks so far here. And then we're going to go Chepe Mariscal by knockout or Chepe Mariscal money line. So that's 4. And then my last official pick will be the main event. We'll take Serghei Spivac. Hopefully we go a 5-0. That's half the card. I mean, if we go a perfect 10-0, that's absolutely insane. And if we predict and call all the right shots on all 10 fights, I mean, man, who is out here doing it better than us at that point? And as far as any, price picks props before I go, I mean, Rosa is good on the feet. I like her strikes, 70.5 significant strikes. That's a lot, though, for a women's fight, especially if she can somehow knock out Yana Santos, or not Yana Santos, excuse me, if she can knock out Pannie Kianzad. So, yeah, her strikes isn't a bad look here. Her fantasy score, 86.5, pretty high, but I would lean that way as well. I did like Marcin Tybura over 2 knockdowns, but then it got bumped up to 2.5. That's just too much. I think Spivac's going to be the aggressor and be the one putting him on his ass and on his feet. So I would take the under for Tybura. Yana Santos has her takedown line is only half a takedown. I don't see why she couldn't get a takedown on her opponent, especially when she's more experienced than Chelsea Chandler. But, Chelsea Chandler could stuff her as well. So there's that. Keep that in mind. And then Damon Jackson, I think under 2.5 takedowns. I think Chepe Mariscal can prevent him from taking him down. And I think he sparks and knocks out Damon Jackson early, so he doesn't have to worry about those 2.5 takedowns. Karl Williams' takedowns was at 2.5 as well, which I really, really liked. But it's been bumped up all the way to 4 now, and that's just way too much, because, I mean, let's say he takes him down twice and just lays on him for the full 3-4 minutes, So him buying time and laying him on the ground could warrant taking the under on 4 takedowns, because if somehow Diniz can get back up to his feet, then the more he keeps getting back up to his feet, the more opportunities Karl Williams has for takedowns. But yeah, I think he's going to take him down a couple of times and keep him there. And yeah, that's my official picks for Prize Picks, if you guys were curious in that for you guys. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Comment down below what picks you guys agree with or disagree with, which picks you guys like, dislike. Let me know. I want to hear all your guys' thoughts and inputs. The more insight you guys give, the better. I'm all here for it. And yeah, let's go profit here. Let's go 5-0. Let's be completely flawless. Find some grooves. Find some success. And if we go a flawless 10-0, and we might do a giveaway. And let me know which picks you're tailing or not, tailing or failing, like I said. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. We will be back next week, next Saturday, for UFC 305, which the main event is taking on place with my current favorite fighter right now, Israel Adesanya, taking on DDP. Man, that's going to be a beautiful fight. That's going to be a beautiful scrap. And actually, a solid card, a great Australian card. And so far, Izzy's looking like the favorite. I'm gonna tell you early right now, and you're probably gonna hear a repeat of me again. I'm taking Izzy by knockout. Yeah, I think Izzy got that one in the bag. I love Izzy there. Yeah, very exciting card. So I might go live. I don't know what my plans on what I'm doing tomorrow because this is like an early card, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. It's a ESPN card that everyone could watch. I'm probably just gonna stick to going live on the numbered promotions. I don't think I'm gonna go live every weekend on every card. It's just too much to keep up. So yeah, I'm just gonna stick to the number cards and do live watch parties and live reactions. I don't know if I'm gonna do it on Twitch. I'm gonna try to do it more there, more so TikTok and Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, I would highly do that because I would also say check out my Instagram as well because I do post my official picks on there, and sometimes I have a last second change of heart, on my picks because I had last weekend's card. I believe I had Alonzo Menifield in a dog or pass situation, and then last second I went to Azamat Murzakanov by knockout, and he ended up knocking him out in the second round. So, yeah, just follow me on Instagram. I post on my stories my official picks, and I always have a last second change of heart. And also, just be careful. Take with a grain of salt my picks. Just know when I say dog or pass, it's not making my official picks or my official cards. I know I've had a lot of people bash me and attack me like, oh, your pick sucks. You did horrible last weekend. It's like, I just said dog or pass. That's the way I leaned. That's not what I officially took because I was trying to find value. But if you go based off of my official picks, last weekend I went I went 6-1, and one of those wins were a prop. 5 of them were all straight up money line picks. The only one loss that cost me on my official card was Victoria Dudakova, which is why it's hard having women's fights make my official card, make my official picks, because they just been burning me. And nonetheless, she lost to an absolute trash can. So it's like, yeah, I'm not doing that again at all. So yeah, just look at my official picks on my card that make my list on Instagram. I will post it on there. We went 5-1. We've been profitable. I think our streak ended 2-3 cards ago. We weren't profitable. I think it was the UFC Denver card with Rose Namajunas was my last card where I barely scratched profit. If not, I went even kill or negative. So yeah, I had a hard time reading that card. I was on Tracy Cortez. A lot of these main events I've been on the dog side, and they've been killing me. I mean, Steve Erceg hurt me. I thought he could have won that. It went the distance, and then Tracy Cortez got dominated, and she wasn't a live dog at all at any point in the fight. I just thought she could pull it off. And then, I mean, Bilal Muhammad, I think, is the first underdog main event that has gone my favor so far this year. I think almost every main event I've taken the underdog. So, and if Merab is the underdog versus Sean O'Malley, I don't think the betting odds are out yet this early. I'm backing my boy Merab. I don't care what nobody says. I got to stick to my guns. And Izzy is the favorited side right now so far after having a huge layoff. So that should just tell you everything you need to know about that fight and what the books think. So, yeah. I mean, Merab is the favorite. He's minus 130 to Sean O'Malley's plus 110 in a pick'em fight. So probably going to take Merab there. And knowing my luck, if I take a favorited side with Izzy and Merab, I'll probably get burned by the underdog. And, I just been having a struggle and a hard time reading the main events recently. So hopefully we can get back-to-back main event picks here. Or actually, last weekend I had Umar by decision. That was the prop that we did hit. So, yeah, I mean, back-to-back main events we've hit. And we've hit on a plus money prop, which was Umar by decision, plus 115. It went down to plus 100 at one point. So maybe Serghei can come through with a plus 185 hitter with the knockout. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys next weekend in the next episode. Peace.